This boy was treated like trash. In this world, commoners can only use swords, while nobles dominate magic. But before dying, Colin obtains a forbidden book, capable of making anyone learn magic. Then he returns 5 years to the past, when he was just a Colosseum knight. But now Colin awakens a genius magic that will bring the nobles of this world to their knees. In Ale City, the last fortress, everything was in flames and completely destroyed. Then, massive explosions began to obliterate everything still standing. Everywhere, the destruction kept advancing, tearing down the castle's remaining defenses. From the rubble, a lone warrior struggles to his feet, utterly exhausted. His enemy says he's the only one left, slowly closing in. With one of his arms, his opponent prepares a powerful strike. He then calls him by name, Colin Hall, with a terrifying smile. Wounded on the ground, Colin just watches the terrible enemy approach without a hint of fear. Even bleeding and at his limit, he glares at the demon with pure, visible determination. His rival says he kept on fighting, even as the last man standing. Because of that, he'll let him choose how he wants to die. To this, Colin replies it'll be right here, facing his adversary head-on without hesitation. In that moment, his eyes only reflect the image of the enemy standing before him. Going back 1 year, the demon invasion against humanity had finally begun. Fighting bravely, the soldiers fell to monsters who used powerful special abilities. It turns out that for humanity, magic was an extremely limited and rare resource, a privilege reserved only for nobles with bloodlines they considered superior. Believing in their own sovereignty, the nobles began a ritual for a massive attack. Thinking they would be heroes, they launched their spell against the enemy forces. Then, several magical strikes were fired towards the demon army on the ground. Little did they know the demons would advance calmly through all the smoke. Their level of magic was easily surpassed by one of the enemy monsters. Returning the attack, a demon launches a devastating blow against the nobles in the castle. Completely terrified, one of them watches the counterattack, unable to react in time. Then, a huge explosion completely destroys the place where they all stood. Fallen on the ground, his comrades couldn't survive the terrible and unexpected attack. He then laments not getting the mysterious book a little sooner. Back in the present, he's still on the ground, completely exhausted and severely wounded. His opponent asks if he has thought about the best way to die. He says he wouldn't mind tearing off his limbs or burning him like the others. Saying he talks too much, Colin decides he has no choice but to use that. Confused, the demon just asks what he meant by that. He picks up his sword from the ground, saying the enemy was talking non-stop. Then he charges forward, yelling for the enemy to shut up once and for all. As their swords clash, the demon seems surprised by the sudden strength of his attack. Using all his strength, he keeps pushing forward, pressing the powerful blow against him. His opponent manages to block, retaliating with a strong kick. The demon glares at him, looking surprised and quite irritated by the situation. Even so, Colin stands his ground and uses his sword to block the attack. Suddenly, the demon starts screaming, taking a direct hit to the chest. Taking a step back, he tries to understand how he was hit. He asks if Colin really thought he could beat him using just his swordsmanship. Starting to laugh, he says that humanity is nothing without divine grace. Suddenly he stops talking and starts screaming in pain, not understanding at all. He yells that it's impossible for human swordsmanship to have wounded his body. He says it would be impossible to beat him using only normal swordsmanship, but holding his sword firmly, he prepares to use one last resort. Using the forbidden sword, he says the story will now be completely different. Leaping towards the enemy, he goes all in for his final attack. Exchanging a quick series of blows, the intense battle between them reignites. Parrying a strong blow, he waits for an opening to counterattack. Seeing an opportunity, he yells that the enemy's guard is wide open. Seizing the chance, he lands a precise blow that tears off his opponent's arm. His face filled with hatred, the demon glares at him furiously after being wounded. Clutching the blade, he questions if that was really the legendary forbidden sword. He says the outcome would have been different if he had used that technique as a surprise. Just then, he notices his sword is starting to crack right in front of him. Unfortunately for him, his opponent clenches his fist, shattering the blade even more. Then he says that Colin came close, but was just one step short. Charging at him, his opponent yells for him to die once and for all. A final blow is unleashed, resulting in a huge and violent explosion. Lying on the ground, he wonders if even that wasn't enough. His enemy says he doesn't know where he learned that technique, but that this is the end. His face filled with pain, he stares at his opponent one last time. Grabbed by the neck, he is unable to react or make any move. He laments that fighting with all his might and tearing off an arm was the best he could do. Remembering his friends, he just apologizes to everyone for having failed miserably. Seeing the enemy smile, he finally accepts that he had lost the long battle. His body is lifted up, as blood starts to pour endlessly onto the floor. All the blood begins to fall onto a mysterious book lying just below. Upon contact with the blood, the book activates a magic circle on its cover. Suddenly, he opens his eyes, wondering what was happening. Looking at his hand, he questions why and how he was still alive. He appears in a strange place, asking where in the world he could be. Just then, his name is called by a mysterious voice, leaving him completely stunned. Turning around suddenly, he asks aloud who is there in the dark. His gaze then locks onto a single point, revealing his complete surprise. Before him, a book appears, and he questions what it is. Then he realizes what it is, saying that it's a grimoire. A voice from the book says that his blood awakened it to help him. He hears the offer to start everything over again from scratch. Clenching his fist, he says he doesn't know who he's talking to, but he continues, saying that if he can really start all over again. He states that this is an opportunity he couldn't even dream of. In response, a book promises to serve him and help fulfill his wishes. After that, he finds himself floating among several fragments. The grimoire appears before him as his name is spoken by a voice. Moving forward, he strikes the fragments as the voice asks him to show it. With a focused gaze, the voice finishes the sentence, asking for a different future. The scene changes, and a cloaked figure appears, holding the same book. In an arena, a large man is cheered on by the crowd. Opening his eyes, he looks a little confused by what he sees. He wonders where he is, realizing it's a slave arena. Then he notices he's holding a sword and a small shield. His opponent approaches, raising his weapon to strike the first blow. In a cold sweat, he finally understands his situation. In the stands, a man comments that he didn't even fall after one hit. Beside him, a nobleman named Slaith agrees. With a smile, he begins to talk about the role of those commoners. He says their purpose is simply to entertain everyone there. Listening to the conversation, the young man stands still, silently observing everything. As the opponent attacks, the nobleman shouts that they are nothing but pawns. The crowd goes wild at the sight, screaming frantically. Everyone in the audience keeps cheering and shouting the great fighter's name. The nobleman watches the spectacle with a satisfied smile on his face. In the arena, the crowd continues to cheer and shout the fighter's name. From his box seat, an older man observes the scene and questions something. He then confirms his suspicions upon seeing the large fighter on his knees. The giant fighter, in turn, doesn't seem to understand what happened. He realizes he has returned to the past, to the time when he was a gladiator. At that moment, he wonders if the grimoire has fused with his body. With a determined look, he says that if that's the case, stepping on his rival's weapon, he uses it to launch himself into the air. He soars through the air in a swift motion, wielding his sword. As he attacks, he declares that from now on, he will change his destiny. His opponent just watches him approach with no time to react. He then lands a precise blow, piercing the large man's chest. Landing stylishly, he doesn't even look at the body falling behind him. He says he will do this to change the future of all humanity. The audience, once noisy, is now in complete and total silence. Holding the grimoire, he says he has no choice but to dominate, but he knows that as a slave, this is just a distant dream. Therefore, he first needs to somehow get into a certain place. Determined, his plan is to infiltrate the powerful family of Marquis Darius Hall. Looking at the Marquis, he resolves to do it as soon as possible. He tells himself he will do everything faster than in his past life. Shifting to a memory, a man says the commoners bet on him. Explaining the situation, the man says they believed he would beat the champion. Grabbing the young man, the old man says he can't defy the Lord's orders. Desperate, he begs the young man to lose, or else he will be killed. He understands that Slaith is sacrificing him to side with the nobles, so he decides to use this situation to join the Hall family. With a new look in his eyes, he is filled with a great determination to fight. Shouting to the arena, he demands they bring the next opponent right now. In his seat, a nobleman slams his fist on the table, cursing in anger. Annoyed, one of the nobles asks why the champion didn't win the fight. Another noble yells at him, saying he bet a very large sum. Trying to calm them down, Slaith tells them to be calm, saying it's all part of the plan. From his box, Marquis Hall asks his assistant what he thought of that move. He replies it was a powerful and precise cut, a very rare move. Smiling, the Marquis says the best part was seeing him defy Slaith's orders. Back in the arena, he defends himself from a new opponent's strike. Meanwhile, Slaith says that if they dream a little, they will spend more money. He assures everyone to remain calm, as everything is going according to plan. With a sinister smile, he promises that Colin will be destroyed in the next fight. Winning another battle, he secures a 2-win streak. Shocked, the nobleman who bet asks what just happened. The other nobles surround him, shouting that this wasn't what they agreed on. The noble who lost the bet wonders what the young man is thinking. Standing up, Slaith orders his man to gather all the gladiators right now. One noble gets angry with the situation, but his companion says it has become interesting. At that, the arena guards start moving toward the center. Charging forward, one of the combatants quickly overpowers and pins his opponent to the ground. Soon after, 2 other warriors join him, ready for a showdown. He then remembers the promise the Marquis made in his past life. To infiltrate the Hall family, he needs to get the Marquis's attention. He realizes that just defeating his opponents won't be enough to stand out. Raising his sword, He says they can all come at him at once. The crowd goes wild, shouting that the slave is completely insane. Then they encourage the other fighter, yelling for him to go all out. He prepares for combat as his opponents advance from behind. Ducking at the last second, he manages to dodge the strikes coming from above. With a leap, he escapes, and his adversaries say it's impossible they missed. Still in the air, he turns to prepare his next attack. With a single spinning strike, he hits multiple enemies at once. He turns with a focused gaze towards the next approaching opponents. Shouting, two warriors charge forward with their spears aimed directly at the target. Using his leg, he blocks the weapon of an enemy trying to attack him. With a single thrust, he lands a blow that hits multiple adversaries. Landing on the ground, he watches the enemies who were knocked down by his strike. Behind him, a huge opponent raises his sword to deliver a fatal blow. Turning quickly, he faces the new adversary who is preparing to attack. He then grips the hilt of his sword tighter, preparing himself. After blocking the blow, he counterattacks, and the sword runs through his opponent. Seeing the scene, everyone in the stands looks at the arena, completely paralyzed. The nobleman watches the conclusion of the fight with an expression of utter surprise. Suddenly, the sword flies in his direction, passing close to his face. Frozen, he stares at the damage the blade made in the wall behind him. With his monocle cracked, he stands speechless at what just happened. The sword then falls right in front of his feet. Kicking the embedded sword, he launches it back into the air. Catching the weapon in midair, he rests it on his shoulder with a smile. Furious, the nobleman yells that he will pay for this great humiliation. While the noble laughs at the situation, the others just watch him, confused. Darius says his plans were ruined, as the pawn has become the true player. Then, another noble says the slave who challenged them must be executed. He then repeats the noble's words, questioning this so-called ultimate punishment for him. Then he asks if the noble's common sense is just to look down on others. At his words, the other nobles grow tense and stare at him, speechless. Slamming his scepter on the ground, he asks if Darius is still chasing false ideals. Showing his magic, he says that it is the symbol of the authority they carry. He explains that their ancestors received magic from a god 1,000 years ago. Since then, a clear social hierarchy has emerged throughout the world. They became divine representatives, but he says Darius clings to the wrong ideologies. Then he asks directly if Darius intends to challenge the great god they follow. Listening to the conversation, he gives a slight smile while still sitting in the arena. He interrupts the discussion, asking what the problem is with all of this. Everyone is startled and shouts about why a slave is there calling for the guards. Pointing his sword, he calls out Viscount Slaith and challenges him as a divine representative. He then challenges him to a fight in the name of God, enraging the noble. Seeing this, the crowd says he must have gone mad to make such a challenge. Meanwhile, the other nobles find the situation amusing and laugh at the challenge. Darius just watches the whole situation in silence, showing no reaction. Staring him down, the noble calls him an insignificant and despicable slave. Then, he accuses him of ruining his plans and mocking God. Launching an attack, he yells about the audacity of being challenged to a duel. Hearing a voice, he wonders if it belongs to his secret grimoire. Then, a screen appears before him, detailing his opponent's abilities. Seeing the boy standing still, he says that if he wants to die so badly, his wish will be granted. But he remains motionless, just watching the noble's attack coming towards him. With a shout, the noble unleashes his attack and says he'll send him to the next world. Surprised, Darius immediately recognizes that magic as the powerful wind blade. Excited, the nobles say he's angered Slaith and bet on how many pieces he'll be torn into. The noble declares he's going all out as his attack closes in. Shouting, he tells Darius to witness the difference in their power. Facing the attack, the boy notes that it's a blade that can cut through anything. He thinks that in the end it's just beginner-level magic. Then he concludes that the attack won't work because of his resistance. With a smile, he says the grimoire's ability will be very useful. Compared to demon magic, he says this level is far too low. Opening his arms, he says that it's nothing more than a simple breeze. Completely shocked, the noble screams, unable to believe what's happening in the arena. Beside him, Darius is also very surprised to see the attack fail. The other nobles shout in disbelief, not understanding how he escaped unharmed. Seizing the opportunity, he leaps toward the noble to begin his counterattack. In a panic, the noble says it's impossible as he draws his own sword. Quickly, he manages to pull the blade from its sheath to try and defend himself. With a single blow, he strikes the noble from above with all his might. His face frozen in shock, the noble is paralyzed. Unable to react, the sword's blade stops just inches from his neck, and he can't move. Holding the defeated noble, he keeps the other sword stuck in the arena floor. At that moment, his grimoire alerts him that a new mana source has been detected. Startled, he sees a magic circle form around him, surprising the noble. Rising from the ground, several skeletal hands begin to grab his legs. Soon after, several hands restrain him, and he asks what this is. One of the hands manages to cover his mouth, preventing him from speaking. Just then, A guard arrives, saying they've responded to the earlier call. Approaching, he accuses him of being the slave who challenged a noble's authority. Surrounded by soldiers, the captain says he is under arrest in the name of God. He tries to break free but can barely speak with the hand on his face. The captain reveals himself to be one of the divine guards, observing the prisoner closely. Changing scenes, the Magic Tower is shown as a major organization of authority. The Divine Supremacy faction is explained as being formed by elite nobles. Trapped by the hands, he knows it would be easy to break this containment magic, but he thinks he doesn't want to draw the attention of his superiors right now. With the hand on his face, he decides it's now or never. Gathering his strength, he begins to shout so that everyone can finally hear. He shouts that he is Colin Hall, son of the Marquis, and orders them to dispel the magic. Confused, the guards murmur among themselves that he is the Marquis's son. Slaith stares at him, stunned, and asks if his name is really Colin Hall. The crowd says the Marquis never had another son besides the well-known one. He thinks that the divine guards would never touch a member of the nobility. Now he just waits, wondering how this will all finally end. Accused of faking his nobility, he stares down the sword pointed at him. Then the man lunges forward, shouting that he deserves the worst fate. Suddenly, an older man arrives and shouts for everyone to wait. His imposing arrival reveals he is the famous Marquis Darius. The nobleman with the sword explains he was about to finish off the insolent boy. The Marquis then grabs the young man, saying he has dishonored the family name. Watching the scene, the knights are completely frozen, stunned by what they see. Meanwhile, the other nobleman is utterly confused by the unexpected situation. Grabbing his neck, he says he thought turning him over to the guild would solve everything. Lifting the young man from the ground, he hoists him into the air with just one hand. He then yells that instead of changing, the young man attacked Viscount Slace. Realizing the outcome, the young man knew his risky gamble had paid off. With a steady gaze, the Marquis stares him down, his expression grim. Still holding the young man, he then turns to speak with Viscount Slace. The frightened Viscount apologizes for all the trouble his son caused. Trying to defend himself, his son yells that the other man insulted his father first, but the Marquis shouts, ordering him to be silent at once. The knight says he's going to have a serious talk with that fool. Letting the young man go, the Marquis tells them they can all leave. Outraged, the nobleman shouts that they can't possibly let that man go. Pointing his sword, he says he won't let anyone take the slave from there. The young man silently observes the argument. With a determined look, the nobleman shouts that he'll finish the young man right there. Without a second thought, he charges with his sword towards the Marquis. Seeing this, the young man simply lets out a small laugh. Then he asks if the earlier threat also included certain people. He ironically points out that the Lord of the Rhine territory is right there. He then asks if that includes the divine guards who came to capture him. With a smirk, he asks if the nobleman intends to start a rebellion. Hearing the accusation, the nobleman freezes on the spot. Dropping his sword, he stammers that it wasn't his intention. Waving his hand, the knight says it was all a big misunderstanding. Turning to the young man, he explains that the whole situation was a mistake. Apologizing to the Marquis, the knight announces that they will now take their leave. The knight then turns to face the frightened Viscount Slace. In a serious tone, he warns that he will report the incident to the Magic Tower. Informing him that his fate will be decided later, the knight departs. Finally relieved, the young man takes a deep breath, seeming calmer with the outcome. As they leave, the leader orders them to report everything about the man named Colin. A female knight then asks if he is referring to the Marquis's son. Walking down the hall, she wonders how the Lord had a son in secret, but the leader replies confidently, saying that he is not the Marquis's son. Another knight points out that he resisted magic, wondering if he had the Marquis's protection. He says he can't elaborate, and orders them to monitor and report the man's every move. The knights immediately kneel, affirming they will carry out the new order. The scene changes to a carriage moving along a forest road. Traveling along a path, the laughter of one of the passengers echoes. Laughing heartily, he says that was a fine performance by the young man. Inside the carriage, the young man remains silent as they travel. Sitting across from him, the Marquis thanks him for his earlier help. He recalls the payment for his freedom. Then the Marquis asks if Colin has ever been on a battlefield. He comments that the young man's movements resembled those of an experienced warrior. Pressed by the question, Colin prepares to tell his story. Beginning to speak, he says he was born in a village and was sold. Continuing his story, he says a nobleman bought him and taught him how to fight. He describes the nobleman as being like a real father to him. Revealing his past, he says he couldn't live up to that person's ideals. With a determined look, he affirms that now he will live by his own expectations. Hearing this, the Marquis is surprised by the young man's strong determination. Realizing the situation, he concludes that the blows failed due to basic magic. Analyzing the young man, he reflects on the great potential he sees in him. Believing in his future, he thinks the young man can achieve his own ideals. At that moment, a servant approaches and calls for Lord Darius to inform him of something. After some time, the carriage wheels finally stop turning. Arriving at a huge mansion, The servant announces they have reached their destination. Moving across the estate, the carriage approaches the entrance of the beautiful palace. Stepping out of the carriage, the Marquis asks Colin to follow him inside. He then informs the young man that from this moment on, he is no longer a slave, but he warns him that this doesn't mean a life of peace and quiet. Hearing the warning, Colin replies that the law of the world is survival of the fittest. Stopping on the stairs, he warns that his help ends right there. He then says that overcoming the next challenge is up to the young man himself. Facing his destiny, the young man prepares for what's to come. With a smile, he turns and says that he's counting on Colin. Then he enters the mansion, thus ending the first phase of his plan. To preserve their authority, nobles married only among their own kind to maintain the bloodline. The Hall family was particularly obsessed with this blood supremacy, but there was an exception. Darius Hall was that exception, born to a servant mother. Because of his origins, he faced terrible and severe prejudice. Even so, with great effort, he managed to rise to the rank of Duke, becoming the Lord of the Rhine territory, a name everyone knew very well. Arriving at his estate, he says he doesn't care at all about one's origins. Walking through the hall, he states that their past doesn't matter to him. After all, he explains that in this place, strength is everything. Through it, you can obtain wealth, status, and great honor and respect. Touching the door, he says he'll give them anything they desire, but he warns that it depends on whether they have the skills to deserve it. Then he looks directly at the boy, telling Colin to keep that in mind. Surprised, the young man questions him, asking if he really meant anything. With a determined look, he starts to ask what would happen if he asked for the Lord's seat as his reward, leaving everyone present completely astonished. Surprised by the audacity, the Lord repeats the boy's words, trying to process the request. Suddenly, he starts laughing out loud, finding the whole situation very amusing. With a smile, he challenges the boy to try and take the seat if he's confident enough. Shifting to a flashback, it's explained that Marquis Darius believes in pure meritocracy. Because of this belief, he was despised by the bloodline supremacists. Just then, a woman appears before him and welcomes him. Turning his head, he shows his clear displeasure with the unexpected reception. Then his wife Katrina and their son Freed say they were waiting for his return. Walking through the hall, he says he didn't tell anyone, but she replies that a little bird told her. With a tone of irony, he asks if it was really a little bird that told her everything. Maintaining her composure, she stares at him with a confident expression, without saying another word. Suspicious of her answer, he continues to stare at her, trying to understand the truth. Accusing her directly, he claims that she actually had spies following his every move. She was the woman who destroyed his ideals, inheriting everything from her late parents. Now she plans to make her son, Freed, the Marquis's successor through manipulation. In his past life, he fell for the trap, but he guarantees that won't happen again. With a confident smile, he says he's incredibly honored to be welcomed by them. Introducing himself, he says his name is Colin Hall, and that he will devote his strength to the family. Repeating the name Hall, her son shows total contempt and surprise. Angrily, he asks who the boy thinks he is to use the family name. Seeing him as a mere slave, she calls for Cornell to handle the situation immediately. Hearing the call, the man beside her answers yes, awaiting her orders. Turning to him, she questions if he has been neglecting the newcomer's education. With nothing to say, he just lowers his head, accepting the scolding in silence. Holding his sword firmly, the young man prepares to respond to the unjust accusation. With conviction, he shouts that he received the surname from the head of the Hall family himself. Pointing his sword, he asks if they have any objection to the Lord's decision. Warning everyone, he promises that one day he will become the Lord and make them all bow. Speechless, she just glares at him with a look of pure rage and indignation. Gritting his teeth, her son glares back with pure hatred. Finding it amusing, the Lord just watches the whole situation with a smile on his face. Shocked, the servants question how he dares to mention the great lord's name. The maids whisper, finding it absurd that a slave would say such things without fear. To get everyone's attention, she clears her throat loudly. At this, the servants fall silent, quietly awaiting further orders. Turning his head, he keeps the same expression, unshaken by the tension. With disdain, she lets out a sigh, showing her complete contempt for the situation. Shouting furiously, she says that an insignificant slave shouldn't dare to speak. Immediately, the servants begin to grab the weapons that were stored nearby. Preparing for combat, they all get into position, ready to advance at any moment. Then she orders her servants to capture him immediately, making them all advance together. Shouting loudly, the Lord orders them all to stop what they're doing. He then stands in front of the young man, protecting him from the servants' advance. Revealing that it was all true, he even considers letting Colin inherit his position. Completely shocked, his son screams, calling out his dear father's name. Unable to believe what he's heard, he asks what the hell his father was saying. Keeping a serious expression, he stares back at his son, not backing down from his decision. With a smile, She says that if that's the case, she won't say another word. But she continues her speech, saying that, however, there is something to be considered. She points out that on the estate, hundreds of servants work hard every day, and yet, she notes, very few of them have received a family name. Many there had served for years, waiting for a chance to be recognized by the Lord. So for a newcomer to suddenly be called a hall is absurd. Questioning the decision, she says he can't expect everyone to be satisfied. So she suggests that they should put him through some kind of test to prove his strength to everyone, but if he fails, he must leave in disgrace. With a smile, he says that won't solve anything at all. Furious, he shouts and asks if the young man is afraid. Saying it doesn't make sense, he suggests everyone take the test then. Stating that the successor needs to be competent, he calls the other a failure. Gritting his teeth, he yells that this is the first time he's been humiliated. Disgusted with the situation, he refuses to compete against servants and slaves. Touching his shoulder, his mother calls his name, trying to calm the situation. Looking directly at her son, she says she has warned him about this many times. Explaining that a noble must be elegant, she tells him not to get upset. Then she reminds him that he possesses the absolute power of the purest magic. Therefore, she suggests they just sit back and watch everything from above. Though reluctant, he just agrees with what his mother said. In the end, his plan was accepted, with a test scheduled for a month from now. Until then, he will have to work as a low-level servant. Seeing this as an opportunity, he decides to use the time to study his grimoires. Walking down the hall, he comments that the young man seems to know exactly how to please the Lord. Explaining the situation, he says that man has noble ideals and is being watched. Recalling something, he questions him, saying a noble found him before he arrived. But he reveals the slave association reported that he came from a village. Drawing a dagger, he says the Lord was agonizing over his successor. So, for an ideal person like him to appear out of nowhere is too lucky. Pressing the blade, he asks if the young man doesn't find all of this too convenient. Holding the weapon, he says, Cornell's logic makes sense, but the people from the association are trouble. Revealing the truth, he explains that they teamed up with slaves to deceive people. Showing a flashback, he asks if the man thinks they would have left him in peace. Analyzing the facts, he notes that his movements were advanced level or higher. Within the Empire, both magic and swordsmanship have well-defined power levels. Focusing on magic, most nobles ended up with only a beginner's level of swordsmanship. Meanwhile, special organizations like the Divine Guards required an advanced power level. Realizing the truth, he wonders if the merchants tricked him with false information. Noticing he's caught on, he warns that he'll clear up any remaining suspicion. With a smile, he says that if he were a spy, he wouldn't aim for the Lord's position. Not understanding, Cornell asks what the hell he means by that statement. Explaining the logic, he says a spy's goal is to infiltrate. In other words, he continues, if he were really a spy who had infiltrated this place, the plan would be different. Pointing, he reveals that he would actually be aiming for the head butler's position, because by taking that position, he could easily discover all of the master's weaknesses. So he suggests they make a mutually beneficial deal. Realizing the risk, Cornell warns that he'll make enemies of other nobles with this. But the young man says it's high risk, high reward, as the successor needs the Lord. Impressed, he realizes the boy is strong, as well as very smart and determined. Still, he finds the deal too advantageous and suspects another scheme. Deciding to agree for now, he says he'll show him to his quarters first. With a confident smile, he simply says he understands and follows him calmly. The scene changes. They go to a more remote and simple area of the property. Once there, he tells the young man he can choose any spot he wants. It's then revealed that the servants are divided into 3 ranks, established by the madam. The high-class servants serve the family, while the middle-class ones live in the mansion. Besides them, there were also the servants who did the heavier manual labor. The low-class servants live in the barracks and are forbidden from entering the mansion. Explaining the duties, he informs him that the pay is 3 coins a day. Then he announces that he's finally going to reveal the most important rule of all. He must show absolute obedience to the servants who are senior to him. Behind him, a few men were watching with unfriendly expressions on their faces. They start to laugh, glancing at each other as if they're plotting something bad. Stressing that the rules were decided by the madame, he turns and starts to leave. With a smile on his face, he walks away, leaving the young man behind alone. Processing the information, he understands the rule about the so-called absolute obedience that was imposed. Approaching the group, he introduces himself as Colin, the newcomer who just arrived. With a smile, he says he's looking forward to working with all of them. Mocking him, they start laughing out loud at what the young man just said. Then, one of them sarcastically calls him future lord, making the atmosphere tense. Pointing a finger, he says he heard the newcomer picked a fight with the madame. Then another one says they're going to teach him how to greet people around here. With a quick move, he smashes the bottle he was holding against the wall. Threatening the boy, he orders him to kneel and start slapping himself. Draping an arm over his shoulder, the group's leader asks if he heard the orders correctly. Grabbing him by the collar, he tells the newcomer to hurry up and obey. Reacting quickly, He lands a solid punch right in the servant's face. Surprised by the action, the other two servants are left stunned, not understanding what happened. He spins, landing another blow that sends the second servant flying. The man falls to the ground, unable to get back up. Raising his hand, he warns that if this is how it's going to be, he won't hold back. With a final blow, he hits the others, eager to work with them all. Repeating the phrase, he lands one blow after another, showing his strength. Furious, the other two call him a brat, not believing what they're seeing. Screaming for his death, they charge together, one with a chair and the other with a bottle. Keeping calm, he just watches the two approach with a slight smile. At that moment, he decides to draw his sword, preparing for the fight to come. With a swift strike, he hits the first man, disarming him in a single move. Seeing his friend on the ground, the other one stops mid-attack, completely surprised. Seizing the opportunity, he leaps toward the last servant still standing. Landing a precise blow, he strikes the man's face with great force and speed. Thrown backward, the man flies through the air, landing hard on the barracks floor. On the floor, the last servant grumbles, cursing the newcomer for his strength. Approaching him, the young man points the blade of his sword right at his neck. Pressing the weapon against him, he asks if the man is finally satisfied with the outcome. Terrified, he screams desperately that yes, he is totally satisfied. Sheathing his sword, he says that's very good to hear, ending the fight. His face full of rage, he starts cursing the young man out. Grabbing the broken bottle from the floor, he prepares to attack again. Screaming that the newcomer is going to die, he charges with the makeshift weapon. Letting out a tired sigh, he shows he's fed up with the whole situation. Reacting to the attack, he delivers a blow that severs the servant's arm. The man's arm is torn off, making him scream in agony. As the servant screams in agony, he just watches the scene calmly. Looking at him, the young man asks if he finally feels satisfied now. For now, he's managed to gain Cornell's trust, but the future is uncertain. Deciding to prepare, he opens his grimoire, his eye glowing with power. To protect himself, he needs to study magic and get much stronger now. In a flashback, it's shown that Katrina replaced the servants when she married Darius. Amidst this, Cornell was chosen as the butler to watch over the new countess. He also had the privilege of being involved in selecting the family's next successor. In his past life, Cornell's death was what led to his ruin. His death allowed Katrina to finally put her son in complete power. Sighing, he reflects that if Cornell had lived, things would have been very different for him. Needing magic, he focuses on using it for both offense and defense. Touching the page, he begins the ritual to absorb all the book's knowledge. Instantly, the entire contents of the book begin to flow directly into his head. Feeling a sharp pain, an overwhelming energy courses through his entire body non-stop. Inside the grimoire, he sees the image of a knight named Colin Hall. The knight's image stares back at him with eyes that shine with great power. The energy corrupts him, ordering him to destroy and subjugate everything around him. Reaching his limit, he wonders if this is the price for learning magic. Remembering the past, a woman taught him to close his eyes and feel the mana. Resisting the pain, he thinks about how nobles train in magic with the greatest of ease. With a determined look on his face, he shouts that he's starting to get really excited now. Extending his hand, he tries to touch the immense energy surrounding him. Determined, he yells that he'll succeed, no matter how difficult or painful it is. With a focused gaze, he swears he will succeed, whatever the cost. Suddenly, a very loud scream echoes through all the servants' quarters. The scene shifts to the next morning, where he's seen washing some clothes in a wooden bucket. Just then, one of the servants spots him and gets his companion's attention. Seeing the brat approach, they just stand there, watching the young man get closer. Coming closer, he yawns and says he thought he'd be stabbed in his sleep. With a smirk, he warns them it wouldn't have done them any good. Then, a status window appears, showing all his new and powerful abilities. With a satisfied smile, he celebrates, saying his training was a success. Saying he's exhausted, he decides he'll get something to eat first. Suddenly, a group of guards appears, ordering everyone to clear the way immediately. Two servants stop to watch, wondering if that's the guard corps. As they approach, a guard yells for them to bow their heads if they don't want to die. A poor servant carrying a bucket accidentally gets in their way. Standing in the middle of the path, he doesn't notice the guards approaching. Yelling at him not to just stand there, a guard strikes him, knocking the servant down. The blow causes water from the bucket to splash onto the vice commander's boot. Annoyed, he kicks the bucket away, glaring at the servant on the ground. Furious, one of the guards yells that he dirtied the vice commander's boots. Desperate, the servant bows, begging for forgiveness for not watching where he was going. Bending down, the vice commander says that if he wasn't looking, it's no problem. With a smile, he thanks the man, who begins to laugh strangely. Smiling, he says that, however, things won't be that simple for him. Threatening the servant, he says that if his eyes don't watch where they're going, then he screams that the servant doesn't need them and begins a brutal beating. With the man on the ground, the other servants watch the scene with pity. Noticing the stares, One of the guards gets angry and yells at everyone present. With authority, he orders everyone to kneel on the ground immediately, no exceptions. Unconcerned, the young man just wonders what decent food he can get. Suddenly, the servant who lost his arm screams, calling for his older brother. Pointing at the young man, he says it was that brat who cut off his hand. With a hateful glare, the vice commander faces him and calls the boy out. Turning slowly, he faces the group of guards without showing a hint of fear. With a smile, he asks if they want him to cut off their hands too. Licking his hand, the vice commander calls him a brat, saying they aren't like the master. Surrounding the young man, he says the law is an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. Gripping his sword tightly, the young man says that he'll give them a choice too. With a smile, he asks if they'd rather keep their arm or their head. Laughing at the situation, the man says they aren't desperate to pick a fight. Stepping back, he announces he'll leave the young man for another guard to handle. Watching closely, the young man faces his new and unexpected opponent. It's revealed that the man is Daku, a former arena champion. Surprised, the young man never thought he'd meet him again in a place like this. In a memory, the two are seen playing a board game, with him explaining the rules. In another moment, they celebrate together after defeating a giant and dangerous creature. Back in the present, he notices that Daku was beaten by the guards just a short while ago. Not understanding, he asks why Daku is getting involved to fight for them. Explaining the rule, Daku says that inferiors must obey, and anyone who breaks that rule is punished. Annoyed, the young man questions if they can't even complain while being used like this. Not knowing what to say, Daku just remains silent, sweat dripping down. With a slight smile, he seems to understand what's happening in this whole situation. Daku steps in front, blocking the blow that was aimed at the servant. Watching the scene, the man who lost his arm stares with determination. With a sword at his neck, the vice commander is completely surprised by the action. Warning that he'll crush rules like that, he threatens the vice commander with his blade. Confused, the guards wonder when he moved and what just happened. Noticing the speed, Daku is shocked, as it all happened in a single instant. Then he realizes the young man didn't just move, he also stole his sword. Stammering in fear, the vice commander asks if the boy knows who he's messing with. He then reveals he was chosen by Freed himself, the family's divine messenger. Preparing to attack, the other guards draw their swords to start the fight. Watching from a distance, the other servants look on at the chaos in fear. Calmly, he faces the guards with a look of complete confidence and superiority. With a swift move, he disarms the vice commander, tossing the sword into the air. Saying he understands a bit, he warns that he can't let him go unpunished. But before dealing with him, the vice commander turns to his guards, ready to give an order. With smiles on their faces, the guards get ready to attack the former champion. Then they attack him, landing several blows with their swords at the same time. Shocked by the scene, he can't believe what just happened. Deciding to act, he says he'll first teach that trash a lesson. On the ground, Daku is humiliated by the guards, who call him useless. Without hesitating, one of the guards runs Daku's hand through with his sharp sword. Screaming in pain, the guard says he threw away his only chance to survive. Telling him to listen up, the guard says that if he fails again, he'll die. But the young man moves forward, interrupting the torture with a quick and precise strike. Completely surprised, Daku can't believe the young man is defending him. Striking both guards, he defeats them with a series of swift blows. Noticing an opening, the vice commander smirks, seeing a chance to attack the young man. Yelling not to turn his back, he charges forward to land a final blow. But with an agile move, the young man defends against the attack, surprising the vice commander. In disbelief, the man stands frozen, shocked by the young man's speed and strength. Looking at his sword, he can't believe it was broken so easily. Pointing the blade, he warns that next time, it won't be the sword that breaks. With his eyes closed, the vice commander just waits for the worst, terrified of what's to come. Fighting together, he and Daku face the guards, showing great teamwork. With their swords crossed, the two lock eyes for a brief moment in the battle. Leaping back, the two separate, with Daku taking another wound to his back. Stepping in front, he yells for the young man to stop accumulating more sins. With his hand bleeding, he continues to grip his sword with great strength and determination. Falling silent for a moment, he stares at the whole situation without saying a word. Warning that he'll let it slide, he says this will be his last chance. Yelling for them to leave, he makes the guards retreat in fear. Questioning his actions, he asks why Daku didn't fight back, since he was the stronger one. Annoyed, he yells that he has nothing to say to a dead man. Tossing his weapon, Daku hands his own sword to the young man to use in battle. Taking the sword, he says he'll give the weapon to him, as it brings bad luck. Now with two swords, he gets into position, ready to fight all the guards. Calling him an idiot, the vice commander drowns Daku, who made him look like a fool. Submerged in the water, he struggles to breathe, unable to break free from the vice commander. Apologizing, Daku curses the situation as he's held forcefully underwater. Telling him to get lost, the vice commander throws him to the ground with contempt and anger. Questioning the lieutenant, a guard asks if he's really going to let him just walk away like that. With a smile, he orders them to spread the word that the young man has declared war and to isolate him. Lying on the ground, Daku remains motionless, his face wet and looking down. Remembering the question, he stares at Daku, wanting to know why he wasn't fighting back. In a complete change of scene, the story now shifts to the servants' dining hall in the mansion. On the dining hall table, a lavish and plentiful meal was served to everyone. With great variety, the banquet was a devotion to the supreme God and his divine messengers. Before eating, all the servants said a prayer for God's eternal peace. Two servants are talking. One says she dreamed she'd be promoted to senior servant. Elsewhere, two more servants were also saying the same prayer before they began to eat. As he's being served, a man gives thanks, repeating the prayer for the peace of God's messenger. In the food line, the cook shouts, telling the next person in line to hurry up. Just then, one of the servants is startled to see who is approaching. Arriving at the line, the servants recognize him and immediately back away in silence. Standing there, he asks why everyone is staring at him. Blocking him from getting food, the cook pulls the bowl away with his hand. Shouting loudly, he warns that those who don't work don't eat. Turning his head, he ignores the cook and sees another group of servants staring at him. Laughing at the situation, the other servants start to mock and taunt the young man. Confused, they wonder where the young man thinks he's going now. Then they spot the boy heading towards the senior servants' dining hall. Walking past the servants, he yells for them to make way and let him through. Outraged by his audacity, the senior servants order someone to do something about that slave. Not understanding, they wonder what he thinks he's doing there. Ignoring everyone, he grabs a piece of bread from the table and calmly starts to eat. Approaching, Cornell informs him that this is the dining area for high-ranking servants. Annoyed, one of the servants shouts, demanding that Mr. Cornell punish him immediately. Staring at the young man, he remains silent for a moment, just observing the whole situation. Saying it's not unusual, he calls for him to come along to sort things out. Confused, the other servants wonder if that's all that's going to happen. Questioning the young man, he asks if he has forgotten the rule of absolute obedience. Quickly denying it, he says that's not what he was thinking at all. Eating the bread, he says the Lord will reward him based on his abilities. Then he says he accepted the offer and will help cover the expenses. Looking serious, he says that in return, he needs a very important favor from him. So he asks the young man to find the spy hiding on the property. Suddenly, they see a signal, wondering why the Lord is going hunting. Then he explains that the Lord is going to the dark forest to hunt and investigate. Putting the rest of the bread in his mouth, he just listens carefully to the information. With a smile on his face, he repeats the name of the forest, looking very interested. The scene shifts to a deserted path in the forest. In the middle of the woods, a creature with red eyes and horns appears. Watching everything, drinking water from a small stream, the creature remains alert. Then the black, red-eyed deer notices something and quickly turns its head. Just then, a shower of arrows flies at high speed toward the creature. Hit! The deer screams in pain, with several arrows stuck in its body. With a smile, he watches the scene, preparing to finally claim his prey. Approaching, he says he got it, seeing the lifeless creature on the ground. With a dagger, he starts to remove something from inside the animal's body. Using his vision, he analyzes the item, wondering what it is exactly. Removing the monster's core, he sees he can use it to create medicine. Analyzing the item, he realizes the core is of a very low rank. Even so, he believes it won't be a problem for making mana potions. Back at the palace, he asks if he can enter the nobles' hunting grounds. With a smile, he realizes he can enter if he's with the divine guards. Suddenly, someone interrupts him, telling him to stop what he's doing. Yelling angrily, Daku tells him not to act on his own in the forest. Turning his face, he just stares at Daku, showing no reaction to the scolding. With a smile, he says he's going to borrow his sword for a second. Taking the weapon, he uses it to finish off the creature, which was still alive. Not understanding, Daku just watches the scene, completely shocked. Plunging the sword in, he finishes the animal, spilling more blood on the forest floor. Handing back the weapon, he says the thing is now Daku's prey. Annoyed, he yells that this kind of logic doesn't work at all. Sheathing the sword, he complains about having to team up with a low-ranking servant. Confused, he wonders what Cornell was thinking, giving them this mission. In a flashback, Daku shows the dagger, saying he received the mission from Cornell himself. With a smile, he says the two of them need to help with the investigation and bring back food. Back in the forest, he wonders why it had to be this guy. Sighing, he decides he should just focus on the mission for now. With the meat ready, the guard says he hopes God will protect them. Wiping his knife, Daku says he hopes to become a regular member of the guards. Suddenly, he notices something strange and turns his head, completely surprised. Sitting by the fire, the young man calls to him, telling him to hurry up and come over. Annoyed, he asks what the young man is doing. Not understanding the scene. Yelling back, he says that food is meant for the Lord. Taking a bite, he says there's plenty, so a little won't be missed. Offering a piece, he tells Daku to eat some too to keep his strength up. Refusing, he says an enemy of the lieutenant is an enemy of all the guards. With a smile, he points out that Daku only eats once every 3 days. Shoving the meat into his mouth, he wonders when he'll eat again. Then he asks if Daku can protect the Lord while starving on the mission. With a smile, he says not to worry, because he won't tell anyone. Taking the meat, Daku starts to eat, saying it's for the Lord's mission. Watching the scene, the young man realizes Daku was holding back the whole time. Not understanding, he asks why Daku obeys the lieutenant, even though he's so strong. Taking a bite of meat, he says, being strong has nothing to do with it. Explaining their belief, he says the nobles were chosen as agents of God. That's why he became a middle-class servant and a proud brother. Yelling angrily, he tells the young man to stop playing with his feelings. He continues, saying they're lucky to be servants and must work hard. With a serious look, he says, divine power is just a lame excuse. Mocking the belief, he says it's just about being able to use magic. Annoyed, Daku challenges him to try and learn a single spell if it's so easy. With a confident look, he asks what Daku would do if he taught him. Surprised by the offer, Daku is speechless, staring at the young man without reacting. Floating in the air, he asks if Daku knows that he can use magic too. Suddenly, a loud scream echoes, scaring the birds and catching their attention. Surprised, they wonder what that was, not knowing where the sound came from. Elsewhere, a guard screams in pain as a wolf bites his shoulder. Telling them to stay calm, the Lord yells not to break the battle formation. Gritting his teeth, he curses the situation, watching his men get brutally attacked. Then one of the wolves charges forward, attacking 2 more guards with its sharp sword. In disbelief, he finds himself in trouble, fighting against these few dangerous beasts. Still, he charges forward, landing a blow with his shield on the wolf in front of him. Shouting for Glenn, a guard tries to warn him, but it's already too late. Shouting, "Behind you!" 3 wolves surround the Lord, ready for the final attack. Turning his head, he realizes the danger, but has no time to react. With a combined attack, the 3 wolves strike him, severely injuring him on the spot. Suddenly, someone steps firmly on the ground, arriving to help. Shouting that they've come to help, they prepare to shoot their arrows at the wolves. With a serious look, he watches the scene, ready to turn the tide of the battle. Facing the beast, he notes that killing one of them could sustain him for a while. With his bow in hand, he vows that he won't let any of them escape. Stopping suddenly, he realizes the smaller wolves are just surrounding him. Leaping into their midst, he positions himself to attack as many as possible. In disbelief, the Lord wonders if he really attacked the entire pack by himself. With a smile, he says they can't even hunt without their pack. Leaping into the air, he shoots his arrows, hitting 3 wolves at once. Landing on the ground, he readies himself for the beast's next wave of attacks. With a serious look, he analyzes the situation, noticing something strange about the wolves. Even seeing their companions dead, they continue to attack with the same ferocity. Not understanding, he can't believe they don't notice the difference in strength. With a precise blow, he strikes one of the wolves, sending it flying. Shocked, the guards watch the scene, surprised by the young man's skill. With a well-aimed arrow, he hits the wolf's chest, finishing the creature. After all, he says, they're just beasts, easy to defeat. Watching the pack, he sees that there are still 3 wolves left to defeat. Attacking with daggers, he lands several blows, injuring 2 of the creatures at the same time. Impressed, the Lord can't believe he defeated the wolves so easily. With a focused gaze, he prepares for the last wolf that was still alive. Dodging the attack, he sidesteps, escaping the beast's claws. Stopping in front of him, the last wolf faces him, growling and ready to attack. With a fierce look, the creature prepares to deliver its final blow. Attacking with his bow, he lands several blows, using the arrows like stakes. Leaping into the air, he shoots more arrows, hitting the creature's back with precision. With a swift move, he prepares to finish the wolf with one attack. Landing a powerful blow, he throws the creature to the ground with great force. On the ground, the wolf is stunned, unable to get up. With his sword in hand, he readies himself for the final blow against the creature. Finishing the wolf, he shoves an arrow into the beast's head, ending the battle. Warning the young man, Daku tells him not to let his guard down in the forest. With a smile, he winks and gives a sign, saying it was a good move. Honestly, Daku just stands there, not knowing what to say about the situation. Appearing before them, the Lord asks who exactly the 2 of them serve. Daku then explains they came to support the Lord, following Sir Cornell's orders. Surprised, he wonders if they are just a reserve guard and a servant. A guard complains, saying that being saved by them is a complete disgrace. Confused, Daku wonders about the old woman he mentioned. Holding the core, he says that since it's medium rank, it will be enough. Then he prepares to make the potion, following the steps in the magic book. Calling the young man a brat, the guard is annoyed by his audacity. He yells, asking who gave him permission to touch the monster's body. The Lord tells him to let it go, saying their mission is the priority. Turning away, he says that brat is a strange way to call his savior. Stunned by his audacity, the guard is speechless, glaring at the young man angrily. "Don't get cocky!" he yells as his teammates hold him back. With a serious gaze, the young man simply says the guard's name, Marvin, while staring him down. In a flashback, Marquis Darius observes a painting in his luxurious mansion. In the painting were Glenn, Marvin, Sarah, and the head butler Cornell all together. It's revealed that these were the 3 guards the Marquis trusted above all others. Remembering the past, he recounts that these 3 lost their lives in that same forest. Apologizing, Daku says the young man is new and doesn't know the rules. The female guard shouts that the old woman's dog should keep its mouth shut. Confused, he wonders what dog she's talking about, not understanding the insult. Approaching, the Lord recognizes him as the rookie who declared he would become a lord. Acknowledging his strength, the Lord faces him with a serious and imposing expression. But he warns that if the young man doesn't abandon his ideas, he will regret it. Without saying anything, he just stares back, unintimidated by the threat. Thanking them for the rescue, he says they need to go, as they have a mission to complete. Suddenly, a loud sound from the dark forest catches everyone's attention. Everyone turns, startled by the noise, unsure of what's happening. The sound of scattering birds and heavy footsteps echoes, signaling that something large is approaching. Just then, a pack of wolves with flaming bodies appears before them. Shocked by the sight, the guards prepare for the coming battle. Screaming in fear, the female guard recognizes the creature as the fearsome and powerful Blue King. Facing the pack, everyone braces themselves, knowing the fight will be incredibly difficult. With a fierce look, the wolf glares at the guards, ready to attack with full force. Preparing for combat, the guards get into a battle formation against the beast. Afraid, they all face the Blue King, knowing the fight will be very dangerous. Then the wolf lunges forward, striking the ground with a powerful blow from its claws. With his eyes closed, the young man seems to be concentrating, preparing for the fight. Surprised, the Lord wonders who this boy is, watching him get ready to fight. He jumps in front to defend the Lord, blocking the wolf's attack with his sword. With a smile, he says it looks like he saved them once again. With a powerful roar, the giant wolf prepares for the imminent battle. Readying his blade, he announces the name of the technique he's about to use. Taking the powerful blow, he struggles to defend himself with his sword. Even after the counterattack, the creature remains standing, ready for more. He then realizes just how resilient his opponent is in this battle. Then, the wolf lunges with a devastating blow toward the swordsman. Trying to block the attack, he crosses his swords to withstand the full impact. Pushed far back, he finally manages to dissipate the force of his opponent's blow. He then realizes that, in his current body, things are going to be very difficult. Telling himself, he understands he won't be able to do it with his sword alone. When a group arrives, a female warrior asks if he needs any help. The creature then turns, carefully watching the new warriors who have appeared. Positioned for a fight, they prepare to face the 2 giant beasts. One of the men asks what they should do, since the situation has worsened, but he tells the group not to worry, as they are just the king's puppets. He continues, explaining that the wolves only follow their king's orders. Surprised by the plan, the older warrior questions if they're going to fight the king. Another says it's impossible, since not even the Empire's elite could do it. With a confident smile, he replies that they'll only know when they actually try. Believing it to be madness, the young man says he's completely lost his mind. The warrior woman states that fighting is the only way out, but it will be difficult to reach the target. Just then, a man approaches, saying there will be no need for that. He then assures them that an opportunity will present itself very soon. The giant wolf then looks up, preparing to let out a great howl. At its command, the horde of creatures charges toward the entire group. Seeing the attack, the older man orders everyone to prepare to intercept, but the cloaked warrior asks everyone there to remain calm and wait. Watching the advance, he tells them to lure the enemies closer. One of the men gets annoyed, but the older one says to follow the instructions. Though reluctant, the warrior named Glenn seems to agree with the risky plan. Calling to young Daku, he asks the boy to come with him now. He then asks the warrior if he wants to be a brother he can be proud of. Remembering someone, the boy just whispers the name Erica to himself. As the horde approaches, the leader shouts, warning that the enemy has arrived. Everyone prepares for combat, with the captain taking the front line, but he yells to everyone that it's not the right time yet. Insisting on the strategy, he asks them to draw the wolves in even closer. As the larger wolf gets closer, he asks them to wait a little longer. When the creature finally attacks, he yells that now is the time to act. Giving the command, he tells Captain Glenn to use his protection to block. The captain then uses his art, creating a barrier against the horde's attacks. Right after, He yells for Marvin to push back the enemies with his special move. Marvin gets ready, announcing the name of his powerful sword strike. With his strike, he manages to hit the creatures in the front head-on. To finish, he orders Sarah to clear a path using her phantom blade. Sarah readies herself, announcing the name of her powerful sword art. With a single strike, she manages to hit several enemies at once. The leader is impressed, realizing he knows everyone's abilities. He then calls to Daku, saying it's time for them to go together. While fighting, Sarah warns the boy not to interfere. Daku is confused, wondering what he was talking about. Moving forward together, they push through the horde of wolves, clearing a path. He then explains that the king is shaken when he sees a fearless enemy. He then adds that human beings act the same way. The young warrior is still confused, asking what he means by that. The king says that he cannot attack, but he retorts that there are other ways. Daku then realizes the truth, wondering if he's going to use magic now. Focusing his energy, he prepares to unleash his full magical power. With his mana restored, he finally casts the Ice Lotus spell. His strike lands a direct hit, wounding the Great Wolf in several places. Daku is surprised, as he never imagined the guy could actually use magic. Though badly injured, the monster remains standing and faces its opponent. He then asks the creature if it still wants to fight. Showing it won't give up, the wolf prepares for another attack. Leaping over Daku, he gives the boy an opening to attack. The young man then charges forward, running toward the giant wolf's head. Seeing the chance, he yells for Daku to attack with all his might. He then declares the fight is over, preparing a strike with his energy. Using a magic circle, he summons a huge knight with a sword. Facing the beast, the knight prepares to deliver the finishing blow. The creature, however, prepares a surprise attack using its eyes. Firing a blast, the wolf tries to counter the knight's final attack. Struck by a devastating blow, the monster is completely split in two. After exploding, its body transforms into dozens of smaller creatures. He lands on the monster's head, which begins to crumble. Seeing this, his companion says it can't be true. Holding a crystal, he realizes the boy really can use magic. Just then, a group approaches the two, asking if they're okay. He thanks them, saying the plan worked thanks to their help. Walking by, her foot passes near the crystal fragments on the ground. She then bends down to pick up a piece, commenting on the boy. Laughing, one of the men says he reminds him of the captain when he was young. He asks which captain, and the man replies that it's the Marquis. She then says they served together and asks if he didn't know. Looking annoyed, he's clearly irritated by the conversation. Pointing at her, he shouts, "That's enough for today." He yells that his name is Daku and tells her to remember it well. She stares at the boy, completely speechless at what she just heard. Whispering, one of the men explains that Sarah calls the madam old lady. Shocked, he yells, asking if she really calls the madam an old lady. Charging at him, she asks what part of her looks old. She yells that she's a young woman, but he says that's pathetic. Then she grabs him by the neck, asking what he just said. Watching the whole commotion, the other young man just remains silent. Remembering a past moment, they're shown drinking and celebrating together in a bar. Back in the present, a horse approaches the noisy group. Riding the animal, a man asks what all the commotion is about. The group then turns and recognizes the young master, Freed, arriving. Seeing who's arrived, the two look to the side attentively. He continues to watch the scene with a very serious expression on his face. Everyone then kneels, apologizing for the mess they were making. He narrows his eyes, questioning what exactly was happening there. Kneeling, the man explains they were ambushed by monsters during an investigation. Continuing his report, he says the two young men saved the entire group. Freed then looks at the other young man, wondering what he's doing here. With a smile, he pulls the weapon embedded in the fallen monster's body. The man suggests taking them both, saying they have great potential. It's shown that the young man's goal is to take the Lord's seat. His father, knowing this, would put him at a disadvantage in the battle for succession. With a tense expression, he analyzes the situation before him. His gaze fixes on the scene, showing he's noticed something. Just then, the other young man says, "That's it," seeming to have an idea. A smirk forms on his face. He seems to have found a solution to the problem. Arriving on horseback, he recognizes Daku and immediately questions who his new companion is. He then accuses him of breaking the rules by being on the hunting grounds. Called a useless man, he just remains silent without any reaction. Then he taunts him, mentioning what his sister Erica would think if she saw him now. Turning his back, he replies that it's better than being a brat who can't do anything without his mommy. He then turns and greets the noble, calling him a complete failure. In the midst of the chaos, a woman laughs at the insult, and the man beside her scolds her. Furious at the insult, he yells, asking what they just said to him. Keeping his cool, he explains that people don't kneel because they find him impressive. Meanwhile, the nobles group just watches the scene intently. He adds that it's actually because his mother is a powerful countess. Mocking the noble, he says it must be nice to boss people around because of your parents. The noble then says he could kill him easily, but he just replies that it's true. But he adds that to kill him, he'd have to go to his mommy first. Finishing the taunt, he says to ask her permission to kill the slave. Grinding his teeth in anger, he completely loses his patience with the provocation. Screaming furiously, he orders his men to capture him that instant. At that moment, chains emerge from the ground and rush toward him. Still, he remains motionless, just watching the chains approach. The chains quickly reach and wrap around his hands and arms. Completely immobilized, he is bound by the chains of shadowy creatures. One of the creatures then approaches from behind, pointing a blade at his neck. Startled, one of the men yells that they are the feared blades of the Empire. Then the woman explains they are a group of assassins from the Williams family. Elsewhere, the noblewoman commands her forces with a very serious gaze. Back at the scene, one of the creatures says the young master shouldn't do this. Daku then warns that they can't do this, as they are there under Cornell's orders. Turning around annoyed, the noble asks if Daku is trying to defy him too. Not knowing how to respond, the man just stays silent in the face of the threat. Ignoring everything, he just calls out the name of the captain accompanying him, Glenn. Even while captured, he tells them not to worry and to just report the results. The group then realizes he's trying to ensure they can escape. The woman then says they can't take sides and must leave quietly. With no other choice, the older man agrees and prepares to retreat. Asking the noble's leave, they turn and start to leave the area. Now alone, the noble asks if he understands his complete powerlessness in that moment. With a smile on his face, he replies that if he's going to kill him, he should just get it over with. Amused by the situation, the noble starts to laugh at his response. Drawing his sword, he says he just had a simply wonderful idea. He then calls for Daku, who looks at the scene with great surprise. Staring at the young man, he warns that all actions always come with great responsibilities. He throws a sword on the ground, ordering Daku to pick it up immediately. Next, he orders Daku to use the sword to kill the slave. Shocked by the order, Daku asks what he was just told to do. The noble promises that if he obeys, he will forget everything that happened there. Remembering the past, the scene shifts to an orc camp right after the invasion. Taking a heavy blow, he's thrown to the side by the impact. Lying on the ground, he faces two orcs standing before him. Using his sword for support, he struggles to get up from the ground. Facing the orc leader, he's called a completely pathetic savior. Looking at the prisoners, the leader says he's willing to release them all, but to do that, he must kill his companion Daku with his own hands. At that moment, a badly wounded Daku appears, still conscious and looking at him. With a cruel smile, the orc asks what his final choice will be. Gripping his sword tightly, he seems to have finally made a difficult decision. Then he gets up and faces Daku, who is held by the orc. Starting to walk, he drags the tip of his sword across the dirt floor. At that moment, Daku remembers that the day their father died was on Erika's birthday. In that memory, he was hugging and comforting his younger sister, Erika. After that, their mother died, and they became slaves, taken in by Darius. Daku then says that Erika was sent to the Williams estate, but she would be safe. With tears in his eyes, he begs him to please take care of Erika in his place. He also warns him not to spoil her too much, as she's always been a picky eater. Crying, he asks him to tell her that her older brother was a knight. Looking at him, his friend just apologizes for the difficult decision he made. Back in the present, Daku is now standing with a sword in his hand. He's still chained by the creatures, but he faces everything with great determination. Gripping the hilt of the sword, Daku seems to tremble as he makes his difficult decision. Seeing the hesitation, the noble calls out to Daku impatiently. He yells, asking what Daku is waiting for to carry out his order. In response, Daku says he can't kill the man who saved everyone's lives. With a mocking air, the noble just questions the answer. He then taunts him, asking what Erika would think if she knew he had abandoned her. Startled by the threat, Daku yells that he would never do such a thing. The noble reveals he's heard news about Erika and taunts him with a new question. He reveals that to afford the sword, Erika skipped meals and fainted from exhaustion. Hearing the news, Daku is completely paralyzed and in shock. Then he warns that if Daku still plans to abandon her, he'll have no more reason to protect her. Trying to stop him, he desperately shouts the young master's name. Falling to his knees, he desperately begs him to please save his sister. Seeing the noble leave, Daku just keeps watching, unable to do anything. Turning back, he orders Daku to fulfill the agreement and finally kill him. Still captured, he asks if Daku really has the courage to kill him now. At that moment, he starts laughing out loud at the whole unbelievable situation. Annoyed by the reaction, the noble asks what's so funny. He replies that a coward lower than a street dog could never kill him. Not understanding, Daku just watches the scene with a very confused look. He suggests the noble have them fight to the death in his place. Confused, the noble tries to understand what he's thinking with that proposal. Just then, one of the creatures approaches him and presses its blade to his neck. Realizing the situation, the noble says he's afraid of the Empire's blades. Finding this all interesting, he orders the fight between the two to finally begin. At that moment, the chains fall to the ground, finally leaving him completely free. Grabbing a sword, he now positions himself to fight his friend Daku. Preparing for the blow, Daku immediately gets into a defensive stance. In disbelief, he asks Colin if he's really serious. Then the noble reminds him of his sister so he won't hesitate to fight. Leaping to attack, he yells not to dare make his sister sad. Charging forward with all his might, he tries to land a blow, but it's blocked instantly. Feeling the pressure of the strike, he holds firm to avoid being thrown back. In a swift move, he counterattacks with a blow that knocks his opponent to the ground. He then realizes that his adversary's attack was incredibly fast and precise. Leaping into the air, he prepares a powerful sword strike towards the enemy. When the blades meet, the impact of the collision echoes throughout the forest. Pinning his rival, he asks why he's doing this right now. He replies that he's sorry, but he has no intention of dying either. With a look full of fury, he prepares to turn the tables. Seizing the chance, he lands a strong blow that sends his opponent flying, but he manages to retreat, creating enough distance to prepare for the next move. Raising his hand, he warns that it will only take 3 strikes to end it all. He then says he will finish this fight using only 3 attacks. Impressed by the audacity, he observes his adversary's confidence. He then yells that he doesn't need 3 because he'll end it in seconds. Maintaining focus, he faces his adversary with a completely determined look. Noticing his confidence, his opponent gives a slight smirk. A short distance away, a man carefully watches the fight unfold between the two. Taking the first step, one of them rushes to attack with speed. Following right after, the other also advances so as not to be left behind. Leaping into the air, the two prepare to deliver their blows simultaneously. He then states that he won't abandon his comrades no matter what. With their swords locked, they stare at each other up close with great intensity. In that instant, a memory emerges, showing a cloaked figure saying the same thing. Shaken by the memory, his expression changes completely in the middle of the confrontation. Using a quick footwork maneuver, he manages to unbalance his adversary. Appearing out of nowhere, 2 skeletal figures watch the situation in surprise. Realizing the threat, the two position themselves back to back. Then together, they execute a spinning attack that hits everything around them. Struck squarely by the attack, the other 2 men scream in pain. Feeling the impact, he wonders what the hell is happening around him. With a serious expression, he tries to understand where all that power came from. Leaping towards him, the warrior prepares a downward sword strike. With a war cry, he brings his sword down on the knight with all his strength. Facing the attack, the man prepares to retaliate with the same intensity. Extending his hand, he manages to block the sword strike before being hit. He says the opponent really knows how to fight, but it won't be enough. With a confident smile, he prepares to show his true strength. He then yells for the warrior not to underestimate him for a moment. Launching a counterattack, he lands a blow that sends his adversary flying. Falling to the ground, he finds himself surrounded by several cloaked figures in the forest. His eyes wide, he realizes that more enemies have just arrived. The man then yells for all of them to stay out of that fight. But ignoring the warning, 2 figures prepare to attack with their weapons. He then yells that he's the one who will finish off the opponent. Observing all the movement, he maintains a very serious expression. Yelling with all his might, he concentrates a great energy in his hand. Then a huge circle forms in the sky, drawing everyone's attention. Looking up, he wonders what that formation is. As he's enveloped by that energy, the system detects a magical power there. With a slight smile, he warns that things are about to get very complicated. Looking at his stats, he notices his magic power and mana double with every level. Questioning the system, he wonders why he wouldn't be able to handle that power. Holding the crystals, he says he'll only know the truth if he actually tries. Screaming furiously, he says he'll show them the real difference in power. Then he unleashes a powerful strike as the warrior prepares to counter. From the ground, a wall of ice erupts, completely blocking the knight's blow. Protected by his barrier, he faces the enemy with a determined gaze. The enemy's strike then explodes upon impact with the ice barrier. Surprised, he wonders if that was magic or just a trick of his eyes. Thrown backward, he screams in disbelief at what just happened. Mounted on his horse, he watches the ice shards neutralize his attack. Completely confused, he wonders why the hell there's ice in a place like this. Planting his feet firmly, he asks if that was all his opponent had. Staring down the knight, he calls him a failure without any hesitation. In disbelief, the men wonder how he managed to survive that attack. Surprised by the situation, he carefully observes what is happening. He refuses to believe it, saying there must be some kind of trick. Shouting in fury, he says it's impossible for a slave to use magic like that, but he stands firm, declaring he won't be defeated here. Just then, the system warns that magic cannot be used due to a lack of mana. Weakened, he leans on his sword to keep from falling. With great effort, he tries to resist the enemy's overwhelming power. He then mutters, "Damn it," as he's hit square on by the opponent's strike. As he's consumed by the energy, he tries to understand what's happening. Unleashing his power, the knight screams for him to finally die. A massive amount of energy is fired toward the warrior. Hit by the blast, he screams in pain from the impact of the explosion. Badly wounded, he wonders if this is the end for him. He laments that this is happening just when he had a chance to start over. Then a warning appears saying that using magic without mana can cause it to go out of control. Screaming, he shouts that there's no way he'll die, as he is engulfed in flames. His entire body is then enveloped by a strange and powerful energy. After the transformation, the system window shows all his attributes as unknown. Looking at himself, he wonders what overwhelming power this is that he has awakened. Feeling intense pain, he questions what is happening to him. Looking at the enemy, he says it looks like he won't last much longer. Saying he'll end this quickly, he launches a powerful strike in his direction. Seeing the attack, the knight wonders if that is some kind of magic. He then says he's never heard of magic like that in his entire life. With a furious roar, he leaps with all his might toward the knight. His sword then clashes with the crystals the knight created to defend himself. The knight protects himself with his arms as the impact shatters his defense. Even as his defense breaks, he tries to withstand the force of the blow. Breaking through the defense, he lands a direct hit on his opponent. With a fixed gaze, he prepares to end the confrontation once and for all. Attacking with everything he's got, he tries to strike the knight, who defends with his hand. Feeling the force of the blow, his eyes widen in disbelief at the power. Holding the blade, he realizes the situation has turned very bad for him. Piercing the defense, the strike hits both the knight and his horse square on. Pushed back by the energy, he yells, "Damn it!" Standing, he grips his sword tightly, ready for the next move. Looking closely, he realizes this guy is no ordinary person. Maintaining focus, he stares at his opponent without looking away. He then clasps his hands, saying his rival seems to be at his limit. Releasing his energy, he launches a powerful strike toward his adversary. Braced for the impact, the young man stands firm against the wave of energy, but he suddenly charges forward, dodging strikes across the battlefield. Leaping toward him, he announces, "This is the final blow." Then he lunges with all his might, aiming for a decisive strike against his enemy. In this decisive moment, the two lock eyes during the fight. To everyone's surprise, he manages to stop the blow with a barrier. Thrown backward, he's sent flying by a powerful explosion. Arriving on the scene, an older man intervenes and says that's enough. He then explains that these are hunting grounds, not an arena. Mounted on his horse, he orders the two to fight when they get back home. Surprised by the order, the young man stares at his father, not knowing what to say. Recognizing the man, he identifies him as Marquis Darius. Leaning on his sword, he finally says the confrontation is over. Seeing the young man's condition, the Marquis is left completely speechless. Telling him he can rest now, he finally collapses and falls to the ground. A few days later, he begins to wake up in an unfamiliar room. Slowly opening his eyes, he wonders where he is. Then a memory of the fight flashes through his mind, startling him. Sitting up suddenly, he looks around, completely confused by the situation. Looking at his own hand, he questions if he's back to normal. Just then, a voice says that he's finally woken up. Turning his head, he looks to the side to see who was speaking. Startled, he sees a boy and shouts the name Daku. Looking tired, the boy simply wishes him a good morning. Daku starts explaining that he suddenly collapsed after that battle. Recalling what happened, he says the captain was screaming for him not to die. With an awkward smile, he replies that's a bit of an exaggeration. Getting out of bed, he prepares to leave the room. Saying his body feels better, he decides to thank the others and get something to eat. He then turns and says there was one more thing he wanted to say. With a gesture, he also thanks Daku for his help. Surprised, Daku thinks to himself that he really knows how to thank someone. Leaving the house, the two walk peacefully through the city streets. Suddenly, a group of men on the street recognizes him and becomes alert. Surrounding the two, they stare at the young man, who asks what they want. Further ahead, two maids were talking about him and someone named Freed. Walking past them, he asks what they were saying about him. Startled, the two run off, screaming desperately down the street. Seeing this, Daku says they acted like they'd just seen a ghost. Repeating the word ghost, he becomes thoughtful about what Daku said. Daku shouts that he looks like a ghost, and he asks whose fault that is. Taking a step forward, a bald man slowly approaches the two of them. As they argue, he gets closer and says, "Well, look who decided to show up." Mocking him, he calls him the great and wise future lord. He then tells one of his men to stay out of it, and the man apologizes. Staring intently at the young man, he seems to be preparing for a confrontation. He shouts that he's here today to settle the score from the other day. Keeping his cool, the young man just stares at him without saying a word. Admitting his previous defeat, he says he let his guard down and was caught by surprise. But gesturing with his hand, he warns that this time will be different. With a serious look, he guarantees it won't be so easy this time. Stating he won't be fooled again, he faces the young man, ready for a fight. In a fighting stance, He then calls for the squad of guards. Unfazed, he simply continues to watch his enemy's movements. But noticing the lack of action, he looks at his men, confused. Shouting at his men, he orders them to attack on his signal. Afraid, one of the guards remembers that guy as a monster. Seeing the situation, Daku smirks, flustering the young man. Calling his men cowards, he thinks he can't back down now. Then he turns, noticing Daku standing there, watching everything. With a smile, he realizes he can take his anger out on the boy. Thinking about his strategy, he decides he can handle the boy. Moving quickly, he grabs Daku and accuses him of treason. Surprised by this, Daku says he's going to take Freed's place. He then raises his fist, saying he will punish the treacherous boy. But before the blow can land, a hand grabs his wrist tightly. Stopped in his tracks, he wonders what's happening. Then Daku says he has no right to judge him for anything. With a swift movement, he breaks free and pushes the man's hand away. Supported by his guard, he's infuriated at being challenged by the boy. At that moment, someone approaches with firm steps, drawing everyone's attention. Getting closer, a man asks what all the noise is about this morning. Along with his group, he complains that they can't even eat in peace. Recognizing the group, he says the elite knights have arrived to finish them off. Approaching, the knight asks what happened, and he says he'll give a report. Pointing at the two, he says he was just teaching them some manners. Ignoring the accusation, the young man waves and greets the newcomers. Annoyed by his audacity, he calls him an insolent fool without a second thought, but one of the knights holds him back and says he bet he would wake up today. Speechless, he stares at the knight, completely shocked by the revelation. Celebrating the bet, they ignore the man, who is left completely confused. In complete disbelief, he wonders if this is all a dream. Complaining to the knights, he says this is a violation of the rules. Then the female knight grabs him, saying they don't care about the rules. Whispering in his ear, she tells him to shut up if he doesn't want to get hurt. Turning to leave, the group's leader just tells them to go. With a victorious smile, he apologizes for winning yet again. Heading to a tavern, the whole group makes a toast with their mugs. As they drink together, he tells them he was saved by them again. At this, she says it was perfect, as she never liked that vice captain anyway. Daku then asks if Sarah also had problems with the vice captain. Furious, she yells at him not to ask, and he apologizes. Clearing his throat, the leader of the knights gets everyone's attention. Revealing the reason for the talk, he invites the two to join them. Shocked by the invitation, Daku asks if he wants them as elite knights. He then explains they would be treated the same as high-level servants. Rejecting the offer, he says he has no interest in becoming a knight. With a wink, he reveals that he actually has much bigger ambitions. With no reaction to his answer, an awkward silence falls over the table. One of the knights then tells him to give up on becoming the Lord of Rhine, but the female knight interrupts, saying what he used in the fight was magic. Pointing at him, she accuses him of using his powers to win. Confused, the knight asks how an ex-slave could have learned to use magic. The group's leader then asks the female knight to explain the story properly. Realizing the situation, he notices they have somehow discovered his secret. But thinking of his strategy, he prepares to use an excuse he already had. Beside him, Daku just watches the conversation, not knowing what to say. Then the female knight says she's going to tell everyone the truth about him. Awaiting the next move, he stays alert to see what their reaction will be. With a confident look, she points at him and begins her revelation. Then she tells everyone that he is a former noble in disguise. Holding her hand, he is surprised when she says she can prove it. She explains that he's an illegitimate son who was forced into slavery. She continues, saying his goal is to reclaim everything he once lost. Questioning the story, Daku wonders where they got that idea. With a nervous laugh, he tries to play off the embarrassing situation. Playing along with the lie, he says she unmasked him and the leader curses the nobles. Pretending to cry, he tells them he was expelled from his family due to a conspiracy. Vowing revenge, he shouts that he will make the nobles pay for what they did. Doubting the act, Daku thinks the captain wouldn't fall for that lie. To Daku's surprise, the captain says he understands and will keep the secret. He then warns him not to use magic near certain important people. Changing the subject, he announces that the Marquis wants to see him now. Heading to the castle, the two walk while the captain watches them. Staying behind, the other knights watch the two boys walk away. Thoughtfully, the captain repeats the name of the city Islay, suspicious of the story. Once inside the castle, Daku says he can't believe the lie worked. Curious, he asks why the young man chose that story about being a noble. Explaining his strategy, he says Islay is a place full of both good and bad people. Being a distant place, the noble story becomes the perfect excuse for everyone. Confused by the answer, Daku asks what it means to throw people off. Then Daku mentions he remembered something he's wanted to ask for a long time. Making a gesture, he asks him if he knows the three-legged crow. He asks if that wasn't also just another technique to throw people off. Remembering the past, Daku was being threatened by a huge monster. Preparing his strike, he apologizes to Daku for what had to be done. Lowering his head, Daku just waits in silence for what's to come. With a swift blow, he defeats the creature, much to Daku's surprise. As the body fell, he says the message for his sister was regrettable. Leaping towards the next enemy, he says Daku himself will deliver the message. He then charges forward, unleashing a powerful blow towards the monster. His sword prepares for the final blow, ending the battle. Piercing through the monster, his strike ends the combat once and for all. He lands a devastating blow on the monster with his flaming sword. Feeling the strain of the blow, he suddenly starts coughing uncontrollably, but the monster scoffs, asking if he thought he could kill it. Then Daku steps forward, saying it would be a problem if they forgot about him. He then confirms that he is also there to fight the creature. Enraged, the creature turns to face the young Daku. Taking advantage of the distraction, he attacks the monster with a powerful and precise strike. Surprised by the force of the attack, he is left breathless for a moment. With a series of blows, he completely tears the monster apart. Pointing at Daku, he accuses him of calling his words pathetic. He yells that if it weren't for his help, he'd be dead right now. Daku then questions what would have happened if the hostage had been killed. Countering the accusation, he says the monsters wouldn't have released the hostage anyway. The argument continues, with Daku saying he could have given a signal. Watching the fight, the villagers are left completely speechless. In another moment, the two were arguing while training their fighting skills. Then he asks Daku to look, who doesn't understand what he wants. Showing his hand, Daku explains that it's the signal of the three-legged crow. He reveals the signal is so any ally can offer help. Looking at his own hand, he falls silent, thinking about the signal. Remembering the fight, he accuses him of being stubborn and hard-headed. Back in the present, he says someone he knew taught him. With a smile, he calls him his stubborn, idiotic best friend. Trying to remember, Daku forces himself to recall his days as a slave. Knocking on the door, they prepare to enter and meet the Marquis. Before the Lord, he asks if the Marquis truly wished to see them. Looking at the young man, he asks how his body is recovering. With a smile, he thanks him, saying he's already fully recovered. Speaking to Daku, the Marquis greets him, and the boy offers his respects. With a serious air, he reveals there is only one reason for the summons. Holding some papers, he says he wants to talk about the hunting grounds. Daku then realizes that trespassing there was indeed a huge problem. With his back to them, he says he's known Glenn and the others for a long time. Looking at a painting, he recalls they cheated death countless times. He then continues, saying he can't even imagine losing them one day. With a sad expression, he regrets not having noticed the danger sooner. Thanking them for saving the three, he blames himself for not preventing losses. Then he tells them both that they did nothing wrong. Taking responsibility, he says the fault was his for failing. Asking about the offer, the Marquis wants to hear their answer again. Apologizing, he says he must refuse the nobleman's proposal. Turning to the boy, the Marquis asks about Daku's decision. Offering the position, he invites Daku to become a royal knight. Stuttering, he feels unqualified to accept such an important offer. With a tense expression, he thinks hard about the Marquis's proposal. Shouting with conviction, he declares that he wants to become a royal knight. Saying he understands, he asks if the young man wants anything else. Seizing the opportunity, he prepares to make a special request to the Marquis. He then asks for Daku's sister to work in the house's main hall. Completely shocked by the request, Daku is left confused by the situation. Confirming the request, he explains the two siblings were always together. As her health is fragile, he says Daku wants to stay close to her. Then the Marquis asks if that is his true wish. Explaining the situation, he says he can't ignore a friend in trouble. Hearing his words, Daku is visibly moved by the gesture of friendship. Asking once more, he begs the Marquis to bring his sister. Reflecting on their friendship, the Marquis looks at the painting of his companions. Warning him it will take some time, he asks Daku to leave for now. Before leaving, Daku looks back and calls out Colin's name. Left alone with the young man, the Marquis walks slowly across the hall. Turning to him, the Marquis asks if he remembers the challenge in the arena. Continuing the conversation, he says he was already sure he was no ordinary person. He recalls being surprised when he took the blow without a scratch, but the Marquis confesses that the power from the last fight shocked him even more. An image of his transformation reveals just how strong he truly became. Questioning the story, he says there would have been many ways to reclaim his life. Looking at the Marquis, he stares at him with a very serious gaze. Raising his hand, he makes some crystals float in the air. Saying he's no one important, he's enveloped in a strong energy. Explaining his condition, he says he's just a guy who knows how to use magic. With a smile, he says it's no big deal for an archmage. Finding it hard to believe, the Marquis questions if he's just an ordinary guy. He then steps forward, asking who the young man really is. Praising the Marquis, he says he is the best lord there is. Gripping his sword tightly, he prepares to make his oath. Honored by the recognition, he says the Marquis values skill above all else. Kneeling, he says his ideal is to end the supremacy of bloodlines. He then swears that one day he will become a great lord like him. With a determined look, he shouts that in the end, he will surpass him. Saying he will prove his worth, he thanks him for being saved twice. Finishing the oath, he asks the Marquis to decide how to use him. With a loud laugh, the Marquis says he really liked his attitude. Dismissing the young man, he says he will wait and see what he does. Excusing himself, he turns and prepares to leave the hall. But before he can leave, the Marquis calls out to him and asks for one more thing. With a serious look, he asks the young man what he thinks of Rowan. Confused by the question, he just repeats the name Rowan, not understanding. Changing his mind, the Marquis tells him to forget it and that he may leave. Then he jumps out the window, leaving the castle in an unusual way. Watching the young man leave, he asks his servant what he thought. Appearing, the servant says that if he is common, he's a genius. He explains that the young man is not a noble and might be plotting something. Agreeing with the analysis, he warns them to be on guard against the young man. The servant then recalls that they've seen something like this before. Standing at his desk, the Marquis says he has one more thing to say. Looking at a portrait, he says he just received a new message. His servant then reveals the message came from the spirit cat. Handing over a letter, the Marquis realizes the time to act has come. Holding the envelope, he asks what they learned this time. Meanwhile, a cat quietly approaches through his bedroom window. Looking at the items, he thanks the Marquis for keeping everything for him. Holding a crystal, he believes his strength will greatly increase with it. Still, he sits down and begins to wonder who exactly Rowan is. Remembering his past, he had only heard that name from Daku. Intrigued, he thinks the Marquis asked as if he already knew. Setting that aside, he picks up one of the crystals and prepares it. Determined to get stronger, he mixes the ingredients and prepares a potion. Then he chugs the vial, drinking all the liquid at once. After downing it all, he patiently waits for the potion's effects. At that moment, a magic book suddenly opens in front of him. Surrounded by the pages, he continues his training and prepares more potions. Drinking some more, he follows the process to become stronger. After finishing the liquid, he tosses the empty vials onto the floor of his room. With a determined look, he focuses on the next step of the process. Shouting to absorb it, he concentrates all the energy into his hands. Feeling the pressure, his body reacts to the immense power he's absorbing. With great difficulty, he continues the process of absorbing the energy. Then, a mana notification appears, and he finishes the process with a sigh. Thinking about the potion, he remembers that the magic book promised better results. Worried about the past, he decides he needs to increase his mana no matter what. Drinking another potion, he complains that the taste is still horrible. Feeling nauseous, he realizes it's going to take a long time to finish it all. After much effort, he wonders if there isn't an easier way. Suddenly, a new notification appears with a different option for him. Reading the message, he considers turning the monster's core into an item. Finding the idea interesting, he starts the process in the magic system. Pointing at the core, he begins creating his new magic item. Closing his eyes, he concentrates completely for the ritual to succeed. During the process, a powerful entity suddenly appears behind him. Following the instructions, he pours all his mana into the monster's core. Imagining the item's shape, he thinks about what he should create right now. With a decisive look, he finally chooses what he's going to do with the core. He then focuses all his power on the core, which glows brightly. Behind him, the entity manifests incredible power throughout the process. Shouting the word, "Create," he releases all his energy into the core. Suddenly, a bright light illuminates the night through his bedroom window. When the light fades, he receives a notification that the item has been created. Looking at his wrist, he sees a bracelet that wasn't there before. Testing the item, he wonders if it's really a magic item. He then reads that the bracelet increases his mana by 1 point. To test the effect, he decides to drink another one of his potions. And just as he thought, a notification confirms that his mana has increased. Realizing its usefulness, he notes that magic items are very helpful. Curious about the item, he wonders what the wild instinct effect is. With a sigh, he turns around and notices something strange happening around him. Suddenly, his vision changes, and he starts to see things differently. He can see 2 maids on the other side of the wall complaining about being tired. Startled, the two wonder what's happening right now. He then realizes it's not X-ray vision, but people's energy. Looking around, he sees the guard squad and their movements. Continuing to observe, he sees the Marquis and Katrina talking in a hall. Suddenly, a voice in his head says it's hungry. Startled, he looks around trying to figure out where the voice came from. Then he wonders whose voice is in his head. He then dismisses the first and second possibilities of who it could be. Looking at the building, he notices a strange flame in one of the windows. Surprised by the discovery, he focuses his vision to understand what it is. Through the window, he sees a young woman holding a strong energy in her hands. Suddenly, the young woman looks in his direction, as if she could see him. The girl's eye glows intensely. staring back at him with power. With the eye contact, he feels a powerful impact on his body. Recoiling in shock, he realizes the young woman noticed his presence. In her room, the young woman is asked by her maid what happened. Playing it off, she says it was just a fly bothering her. Still suspicious, he's sure the voice didn't belong to that girl. Determined to investigate, he expands his search area to find the source. Focusing on a new location, he finally finds who he was looking for. He identifies the place as the dark forest and hears a voice calling for help. Getting closer, he notices a strange mana coming from an illuminated clearing. Seeing the energy intensify, he wonders if that could be a demon. Changing scenes, the Marquis prepares for the knighting ceremony in the hall. Kneeling before the Lord, Daku waits to receive his new title as a knight. Watching the ceremony, the other knights and Colin watch the moment with a smile. With her arms crossed, the woman and her son watch the scene with contempt. In the grand hall, everyone present gathers to watch the official appointment. Then the Marquis touches Daku's shoulder with his sword, officializing the title. From a distance, the woman recognizes him as Daku, the mid-level servant. Remembering the past, she thinks about how Darius took him in a few years ago. Back then, he was used as an example for the other servants in the castle. Meanwhile, her son watched everything, drinking a glass of wine. With a smirk on his face, he pours the drink over the boy's head. As the liquid runs down, he stands still, enduring the humiliation in silence. Moving the Marquis to tears, he accepts the new title of Royal Knight. The Marquis then officially recognizes him as a Knight of the Royal Guard. With a faint smile, he finally stands up as an appointed knight. Celebrating the new position, his friends congratulate young Daku. Turning her face away, the woman refuses to watch the knight's celebration. Leaving the hall, she says that commoners must serve nobles. She then firmly states that this is the unchanging rule of fate. Remembering another time, a teacup is shattered on the floor. Screaming at the other, the maid asks if she doesn't even know how to make tea. While the maid is being punished, the noblewoman files her nails, not caring at all. From their table, she and her son watch the maid being punished on the floor. As she's dragged away, the maid begs for forgiveness, but no one listens. With a hot ladle, the other maid prepares to punish the young woman. Then she presses the hot object against her, making the maid scream in pain. Hearing a scream of Erica, the noblewoman gives a slight smile. In the garden, a girl runs and shouts for her brother Daku. Recalling their conversation, the Marquis asks to bring the maid Erica to the house. Hearing the request, Katrina just looks away without giving an answer. He then explains that it was a promise he made to young Colin. Outside, Daku reunites with his sister, very happy with the situation. Angrily, Katrina can't believe the Marquis went so far for a servant. Annoyed, her son asks why she accepted the Marquis's demand. He then complains that at this rate, their dignity will be tarnished. Mocking her son, she asks who it was that lost to a servant. Stuttering, he replies that if he had used his full power, he would have won. Shouting her son's name, she becomes furious with his attitude. Then she slams her hand on the table and tells him to wake up to reality. Then she attacks her son, saying that only monkeys fight with monkeys. A group of maids is hit by the wave of energy released by the noblewoman. Screaming in pain, the maids are severely injured by the surprise attack. With his arm wounded, the son doesn't understand his mother's actions. As he kneels on the ground, she warns him not to lose to a monkey in the test. The maids lie on the ground, severely wounded from the attack they suffered. Angrily, he says they will end up on the same level as the servants. Lying on the ground, he hears his mother tell them to sort it out themselves. Looking up at the sky, he thinks that he is a fallen noble from the city of Earl. Determined to win, she swears she will stop him for the sake of her family. In a crowded courtyard, fireworks mark the beginning of the great test. In the crowd, a group remarks that the boy seems very interesting. In the midst of the others, he prepares for the test, being called Colin. Elsewhere, a man asks if he really wants to enter the forest. The man laments that only candidates can enter that location. With a serious look, he warns that this time he can't promise anything. Meanwhile, he prepares for the test, observed by others. Remembering the forest, he thinks that Mana wasn't human. He then decides he needs to find a way to investigate that place. Then the family leader arrives to begin the great selection test. With a smile, he wonders if the test is finally about to start. With open arms, he announces that the day of the test has finally arrived. In the midst of the crowd, he hears that skill can conquer all. The leader then announces that the winner of the battle will receive the name Hall. He explains that the test's objective is a ring from the Williams family. The condition for victory is to bring back the ring, which is hidden. With an awkward smile, the Marquis observes the ring in the woman's hands. Remembering the conversation, the Marquis asks if he should bring young Erica. In a flashback, the Marquis agrees to the condition, if she lets him bring the girl. In return, he says he has a condition for the deal to be made. Then she asks to decide what the selection test's objective will be. Back in the present, she informs everyone that there is only one ring. Using her magic, she explains that this means there will be only one winner. At that moment, the ring floats, shining brightly with the energy infused into it. She says she will teleport everyone to a random location along with the ring. In a circle of light, he braces himself to be sent to the test site. With a shout, the Marquis prepares to start the selection competition. Pointing at the participants, he announces that the selection test will begin. Among everyone, he remains focused and ready for whatever comes. With a smile, she yells for the test to finally begin. Near a volcano, several portals open, transporting all the participants. Thrown from one of the portals, he falls at high speed. Landing with an impact, he arrives in an unknown and dangerous forest. Looking around, he says that the memories of his difficult life are coming back. With that, a voice announces that the teleportation of the challengers is complete. Meanwhile, two of the challengers look surprised by the view outside. The purple-haired boy remarks that despite being old, the item he's using works well. Elsewhere, the leaders watch closely as events unfold. As soon as the competition begins, one of the participants slays a skeleton with his sword. The other proves just as efficient, taking down a skeleton with his crossbow. With a smug laugh, the guy with the crossbow prepares to attack the other. Then, the attacker yells at the young man to die, launching a rapid strike. Facing the assault, the youth barely dodges the incoming blade. As they move, one of them warns the others not to rush. Hidden behind a tree, the young man thinks he has no time to waste on these opponents. Soon, a powerful strike hits the tree behind him, which he had just dodged away from. The guy takes his stance, sword in hand, ready for the next move. Just then, an arrow thumps into the tree right next to the youth's head. The crossbowman then shouts at his opponent to give up, while the other prepares to strike. Both attackers declare that he's finished, saying they'll at least kill him painlessly. With a sarcastic smirk, the young man retorts that they're actually the ones who are finished. At that, the boy tells them to take a close look at their own hands. Doing so, they notice their hands are wounded, bloody, and covered in scratches. Meanwhile, the youth's voice explains that's what happens when you steal from others. He then reveals that what hit them is a heart-eating poison bug. The young man explains that the bug enters a person's body and devours them from the inside out. And after devouring one victim, it moves on to the next. Overcome with terror, the attackers shout that if they're going to die, they'll take the kid with them. Calmly, the young man tells them to hold on, as it's not too late just yet. He then reveals that he was also infected by one of those poison bugs. Luckily for him, though, he managed to find an antidote. Holding it out in front of them, he proposes that if they let him go, he'll give it to them. Otherwise, he'll throw it away. The crossbowman tells the other to play along for now and kill him later, to which the swordsman agrees. With forced smiles, the attackers claim they'll let him go and tell him to hand over the medicine. With a subtle smirk, the young man says he doesn't mind handing over the antidote, but, however, he reveals that there's only one dose available. Instantly, the two attackers turn on each other, one demanding the antidote while the other accuses him of plotting his murder. As they argue, the crossbowman asks if he forgot everything he did for him, only for the swordsman to reply that he never liked him anyway. At the sight of the antidote, both begin screaming at each other to hand over the cure. Then, the youth declares he will give it to the crossbowman, who excitedly snatches it up. The crossbowman starts to thank him, but he is suddenly cut off. Out of nowhere, the swordsman stabs the other in the back, declaring the cure is his. With a cynical smile, the attacker holds the antidote high in the air. He then quickly downs the contents of the vial. Sword in hand, the attacker turns to the young man and says he's next, to which the boy asks if he wasn't going to let him go. Furious, the attacker tells him not to talk nonsense, revealing he'll take his head to the lady for a reward. Hearing this, the youth smiles, noting that, as expected, the rule is to call allies upon finding a target. Smirking, the young man asks the attacker if he really thought that was a real antidote, revealing it was nothing more than water. Finally, he explains that his own infection was a lie, and the marks on their hands were caused by nothing but plain dirt. Shocked, the attacker calls him a brat. Enraged, the swordsman screams that he's going to kill him. However, the attacker lets out a cry of agony, blood streaming down his face. Watching him collapse to the ground, the youth remarks that the poison is truly spreading now. He explains that the area is thick with poison bug miasma, making even pure water toxic out here. The young man advises him to be more careful with what he's given in his next life, while the dying man swears he'll be waiting for him. In his final moments, the attacker screams that the Williams family won't let him get away with this. With a smile, the young man slips a ring off the swordsman's hand. He remarks that it's a rather nice gift. Finally, the boy tells his fallen attacker to consider the poison a payback gift and bids him farewell. Soon, two greenish snakes writhe across the forest floor. With that, the young man continues his journey through the forest. Up ahead, the entrance to a dark tunnel appears, framed by skeletal remains. Near the entrance, a horned skull with glowing green eyes seems to watch him. The young man confirms that this was the place he sought. Stepping into the tunnel, He navigates through the many skeletons scattered across the ground. As he walks, his feet weave between the scattered bones. Suddenly, a skull with purple eyes and a blue aura stands out, seeming to observe him. As he moves deeper, smaller skulls with blue eyes appear to track his movements. Further down the corridor, he remarks that the place hasn't changed a bit. Just then, a powerful presence ahead freezes him in his tracks. Sensing it, the young man wonders if someone got here first. A group of challengers emerges before him, warning him to give up because there's nowhere to run. Among them, a pink-haired girl takes a stance, sword ready. With a serious expression, she purses her lips, ready for a fight. The girl leaps to attack, declaring she'll fight to the bitter end. In the midst of combat, she screams as she's struck by one of the men. One of the opponents hits her again and raises his hammer for a finishing blow. The man lands a devastating strike on the fallen girl, tearing a cry of pain from her lips. Finally, one of them steps on the wounded girl's back. She can only manage a weak groan. While she's pinned to the ground, one of the men demands to know where he is. He warns her that she'll end up just like the others if she doesn't talk. Facing the threat, she screams that she already told them she doesn't know and wouldn't tell them even if she did. With a cynical sneer, the man simply asks, "Oh?" Then pressing his sword blade against her neck, he asks how she'd like this. The young woman lets out a sharp cry as the blade digs into her throat. Watching the scene unfold, the young man mutters that they seem to be from the Williams family. Suddenly, the girl looks up, surprise on her face. Spotting him hidden at the end of the corridor, she just stares silently. He mutters an apology, claiming he didn't want any trouble. Following the girl's cry for help, one of the adversaries asks if anyone else is there, while the young man grumbles impatiently. Then, one man demands to know who he is, and the young man just lets out a confident laugh. Raising a hand, he tells them to calm down, claiming he's not their enemy. One aggressor recognizes him as a Williams, but the other immediately warns him not to interfere. At this revelation, the wounded girl just watches him with tear-filled eyes. Watching the girl, the young man mutters that he already figured out what was going on. Then, the aggressor with the hammer yells for the young man to wait a moment. He comments that the young man is wearing the ring, but something seems off about it. With that, the man gets closer and tries to grab the young man to see his face. The other aggressors look surprised and tense at the situation. Then, the young man steps toward the hammer wielder, who seems to be writhing, while someone else asks what's happening. Without hesitation, the young man stabs the aggressor in the gut, saying he didn't want to get involved, but they gave him no choice. With a serious, focused gaze, the young man presses his attack with blinding speed. Then, he kicks the aggressor, sending him flying backward, as the others recognize him as the guy from earlier. Filled with rage, the remaining aggressors scream to kill him. Without hesitation, the young man dashes forward, swinging his sword imbued with blue energy. The sword strikes an opponent's neck, drawing a sharp cry of pain. Next, he leaps to deliver a kick to another aggressor's chest, knocking him down. Facing the carnage, the last aggressor watches in shock as his companions lie on the ground. He grips his sword tightly and curses the young man, filled with rage. Seeing his fallen friends, the man asks in shock what's going on. Then, the man lets out a scream of pain as he's hit by a brutal attack. With the aggressor on the ground, the wounded girl stands, holding a bloody sword over him as the young man watches. The girl's gaze turns to the young man, reflecting his image with stunning intensity. Sword in hand and crackling with blue energy, she charges at the young man, who remains calm. Her sword nearly strikes him, and the young man lets out a slight grunt of discomfort. Clark moves swiftly through the fight, wincing as he takes a hit. As Luna strikes the stranger with her knife, the boy follows up, finishing the blow with his own blade. Enemies down, Luna kneels to catch her breath while Clark keeps watch. Clark comments that they put up a good fight. Luna cries out in relief, saying she thought she was going to die. The boy just rolls his eyes at her reaction. Luna helps the injured boy to his feet. She kneels to pay her final respects to the fallen, wishing them peace. Clark then shifts the girl's attention to something else. He asks Luna why she was fighting those men. She replies that they demanded to know the whereabouts of someone named Cola. Luna explains they didn't believe her denial, and after they were touched, everyone but her died. Hearing her story, the boy comments that it sounds like a disaster. Luna asks Clark if he's a member of the Williams family, and if it's okay for him to attack his own comrades. He replies quickly that they were already on bad terms, so it didn't matter. Clark explains he joined the selection because he wanted to leave the Williams family anyway, and announces he's taking off. The girl grabs his hand to stop him. Luna declares that she'll cooperate with him too. Clark remains silent, confused by her proposal. He questions what someone who was about to be killed moments ago could possibly do. Luna retorts that she was just shaken by her companions' deaths, but that she's actually quite strong. As they talk, a third figure suddenly appears, making a strange sound. Clark asks if the newcomer is with her, but Luna denies it. The stranger grunts, his eyes glowing with sinister energy. Luna stares at him in surprise. Suddenly, the man screams as blue energy envelops his body. Luna wonders aloud what kind of person he is, just as Clark charges in with his sword. The stranger staggers, clutching his head and dropping his hat. The sword strikes home, piercing the man's mouth in a fatal blow. Thinking it's over, Clark yells at the girl to run, surprising her. Despite Clark's attack, the stranger screams again, jamming a knife into his own mouth. As the stranger writhes with the knife, Luna demands to know why he won't die. Clark reveals they are puppets controlled by another puppet. The stranger shouts that they'll keep moving unless the main body inside them is destroyed. Clark explains they are parasitic monsters that infect humans, drain their blood, and turn them into walking corpses. As Clark moves forward, he continues his explanation of the monsters. He reveals that they also share information with each other. They watch the approaching horde, and Clark finishes by saying the monsters notify each other of their prey's location. The horde of glowing-eyed monsters advances rapidly toward them. Faced with the threat, Clark and Luna hurry to escape the monsters. Meanwhile, the stranger Clark attacked resurfaces, grunting as he leads the corpse puppets. The boy comments on how persistent the enemies are. With a slight smile, Clark tells the girl the monsters aren't a big deal, while she keeps a determined expression. Luna admits she was surprised at first, but after hearing his explanation, she's no longer afraid. She confidently declares that as long as he doesn't freeze up, they won't lose. But the boy reminds her that corpse puppets retain their host's abilities. With a confident smile, Luna tells him not to worry. As she asks if he is the Lord's savior, he explains that even with their abilities, the monsters can't use their full power in such damaged bodies. Luna introduces herself and asks for his name, and he begins to answer. Clark gives his name, deciding to keep his true identity a secret for now. The girl wields her dual swords and asks him to trust her, declaring that this time, she will protect him. Luna glows with blue energy, praying for the power to exorcise evil. Sensing her presence, Clark wonders if this is the power of an advanced swordsman. Luna chants a prayer. She asks for dark chains to shatter, and wandering souls to find their way home. Her determined, piercing gaze glows with magical energy. Suddenly, a monster screams as the horde closes in, their green eyes glowing. Luna strikes with blue energy, disintegrating the monsters as she commands them to find eternal rest. She then unleashes a sword technique, cloaking herself in pure light. She smiles with satisfaction, confident in her skills. Watching her, Clark realizes she definitely has impressive abilities. A monster attacks him, but the young man blocks it with his blade. Fighting off a monster, Clark thinks to himself that this trial ground is no walk in the park. His eye glowing, Clark detects mana and looks surprised. Meanwhile, Luna keeps fighting the monster horde with her sword. She strikes an enemy down, monsters disintegrating all around her. With a focused gaze, Luna declares it's time to finish them all. A monster roars and charges, and she readies herself for combat. Luna attacks with both swords as Clark watches the fight. Luna strikes from above with blue energy, while the young man releases red energy on the ground. Her face scarred, she exclaims that this is something new. The monster yells out, asking if it's magic. The young man yells back that it's impossible. "Foot on the enemy!" she shouts in irritation. The monster roars again, eyes glowing and radiating red energy. Then Clark attacks with red energy, causing the girl to fall and scream. Sitting on the steps, she groans in discomfort. Suddenly, the monsters call out names in the darkness. Luna realizes they are her friends. She watches in disbelief as her friends transform into moving corpses. One of the green-eyed monsters roars again. With agility, the young man drives his blade into the monster's head. He keeps attacking the enemy with his weapon, pushing it back. Then Clark shouts Luna's name, looking surprised. Surrounded by glowing-eyed monsters, a terrified Luna screams the young man's name. Crouched low, Clark wonders what happened to Luna as a massive boot approaches him. He eyes the massive rock structure rising with red energy and lightning, wondering what it means. Red energy in hand, the stranger mutters that there were even mage corpses among them. Suddenly, the ground shakes from a heavy stomp. Using strong blue energy, Clark jumps away from danger, carrying Luna. Her face injured, Luna makes a sound of pain. Holding her in his arms, Clark regrets that she was infected by the corpse puppets. Still holding her, the young man faces the new horde approaching, including one in armor. Clark, holding the girl, extends his hand and says, "These enemies are annoying to the bitter end." A glowing-eyed monster is hit by a blast of blue energy. Then a blade pierces the monster's head, shattering its form. The young man runs down a hallway, carrying an unconscious Luna in his arms. Suddenly, a stranger with glowing purple eyes and a powerful aura leads the horde, roaring mightily. Clark, still holding Luna, winks confidently and waves goodbye to the monsters as he retreats. He keeps moving quickly, turning a corner to escape pursuit. He then jumps from a great height, carrying the girl as they plummet. They continue falling toward the water below. Luna lay unconscious, infection marks visible on her face and neck. Once safe, Clark started a fire to cook, while Luna rested. A substance bubbled fiercely in the cauldron over the fire, revealing a scarred portion of a face underneath. Suddenly, Luna panicked awake, screaming about the corpses haunting her. As she remained in shock, a voice from behind ordered her not to move. Surprised, Luna turned, asking if it was Clark holding a knife to her throat. He studied her face, noting the darkness between her eyes and the purple tint to her lips. Clark explained these were early signs of the infection, wondering if a medicinal brew could help as she gasped in surprise. She asked if that meant the infection level was still low. Luna looked around, curious about their new location. Clark held out a container with a dark liquid, telling her to drink up. She asked what it was. He explained it was made from something he found, not a cure, but it might slow the transformation. Grimacing in disgust, she took the bowl, groaning when she realized he didn't even know if it would work. Luna asked if she would eventually turn into one of those monsters, and he confirmed she would. Upon this revelation, he grabbed her face and forced her to drink the potion. Though reluctant, her face twisted in disgust, Luna was forced to swallow it down. Once she swallowed it all, Luna declared she was done and urged them to move on, but Clark asked where they were going. Luna questioned the goal of the test, reminding him it was about finding the ring. Despite her infected, wounded face, Luna said she was grateful to still be conscious, promising to do what she could while her mind remained clear. With a determined smile, she announced she'd handle the corpses so Clark could escape. With a serious look, he replied that he was staying put. Luna expressed surprise at his response, not understanding his decision. Clark explained that he had planned to escape by following the stream out. Holding a small object, Clark asked if she could kill her own friends, even if they were being controlled. Luna remained silent, visibly shaken by his question. Luna shared that Ryan, Caillou, and Morley were her closest childhood friends. They had all left their hometown together to seek success, supporting one another. The image then showed Luna as a child, playing happily with her friends. Teary-eyed, Luna confessed there had been moments of despair, but her fate had changed everyone's fate, and she saw this test as a divine opportunity. She lamented, surrounded by her friends turned corpse puppets, their eyes glowing green. Crying, she said she wanted to free her friends but couldn't hurt them, feeling pathetic as Clark watched solemnly. Clark reflected that her tears were proof she still had a human heart. With a slight smile, he added that they weren't completely out of options. Luna expressed surprise at his words. Clark explained the nature of the puppet insects. If the mother dies, all her descendants die too. He warned that this included her, and though the puppet mother was even more dangerous, he asked if she wanted to fight alongside him. With a determined expression, Luna declared she would fight, reminding him she promised to protect him. Luna added that she was already infected and therefore unafraid, but he suddenly remembered he'd forgotten to mention something. Clark pointed to the cauldron, instructing her to drink it all as a precaution if she was coming with him. Luna looked at him, shocked by his instruction. Horrified, she asked if she really had to drink it all. Running toward him, Luna yelled that she would drink the potion and begged him to wait. Clark tells Luna to stay focused. She replies that she's fine, distracted by the spider webs. As they walk through the darkness, Clark asks if they're on the right track. Luna confirms they are. Regarding their plan to fight head-on, Luna believes the enemy is level 3 or higher. Clark asks what she means. Luna explains that there are many types of monsters in the Empire. The superiors classify them by strength. Level 1 monsters pose no threat. She uses the red-eyed deer from the hunting grounds as an example, adding that level 2 through 5 monsters require advanced techniques to defeat. Hearing this, Clark realizes the puppet insects they fought seem to be level 2. Luna concludes it makes sense for the parasite boss to be level 3, but she wonders why a level 2 monster was able to use magic. Clark tells her not to overthink it. He suggests the parasite simply infected a noble and mimicked their abilities, but Luna shouts that it's impossible. She declares that nobles, chosen and protected by God, could never be infected by monsters. Clark ponders that if it wasn't magic, perhaps it was a unique monster ability, like the Blue Flames or the Blue Kings. Luna corrects him. She explains that magic is a special power granted by God to divine messengers, and when used, a God-engraved circle always appears. As they move, Luna insists the corpse used magic earlier. Clark asks if she means a God-engraved magic circle. She continues, stating she's never heard of a level 2 individual having special powers, and that the Blue Flames and Blue Kings are levels 4 and 5. With a slight smile, Clark shows he understands the explanation. information. Clark then reflects with concern that he just recently killed one of those very monsters. Doubtful, Clark questions if the levels are actually accurate, asking if it's possible the puppet insects were a higher level. Luna snaps back irritably, asking if he thinks the divine messengers would lie. Clark then asks if that would mean God made a mistake. Provoked, the girl shouts that that's enough. She steps forward, angrily asking if he's trying to insult God. Facing her anger, Clark makes a mildly uncomfortable sound and seems to shrink back. He then apologizes, saying it just slipped out. Clark then comments that there's something he can't quite understand. He asks, if the puppet insects could use magic, wouldn't that also make them divine messengers? Walking on, Clark continues his thought process, questioning what would happen if the power of magic wasn't exclusive to the divine messengers. Luna responds in surprise, insisting that couldn't be true. She kneels, explaining that magic is a power granted by God only to devout believers, yet the puppet insect's magic did exhibit a magic circle. The realization hits her. It means exactly what she had suspected. Clark touches her head, and she makes a sound of pain. Clark calls her to move on, asking where they've been heading this whole time. Luna looks around the location and begins to say that Luna looks around the location and starts to say that this was the perfect place to kill the mother of the puppet insects. Then she expresses slight discomfort at the smell of alcohol in the air. Alarmed, Luna asks if he plans to fight using fire. In response, Clark gives a determined look and exclaims that it's impossible. Luna explains that fire might work against normal puppet insects, but she doesn't believe it would be effective against a level 3 monster. With a confident smile, Clark repeats the word impossible in a challenging tone. Holding up a small vial, Clark adds that it's too early to make that decision. Soon, they arrive before a large ancient door, confirming they are in the right place. Clark warns that the mother of the puppet insects is beyond that door. Luna asks how they intend to open such a massive door. Flashing a confident look, Clark shows a dagger and replies they'll just break it down, surprising Luna. He then launches a powerful blast of blue energy at the door, making it shudder from the impact. With a slightly forced smile, Luna comments that even advanced sword techniques couldn't break something so thick. Once the door is broken, Clark looks back and calls for her to follow. Facing the new passage, they continue down a dark corridor infested with spiderwebs. As they advance, a sound of surprise echoes through the corridor, which is teeming with puppet insects. Suddenly, one of the submerged bodies reveals a scarred face. Luna reacts, her face tense, eyes glowing, and purple energy emanating from her body. As they move forward, Luna tries to get Clark's attention, telling him to look at the surroundings. Luna reacts with an expression of surprise and concern. Clark and Luna observe the imposing figure sitting at the end of the hall. Luna lets out a gasp of astonishment. Radiating a purple aura, the mother of the puppet insects murmurs a word about meat. Then, eyes glowing, the monster finishes her thought, murmuring about fresh meat. Surprised, Luna asks if the corpse just spoke. Clark explains that the mother parasite can speak using its host's voice. The monster then voices its craving for fresh meat, saying it has been far too long. Luna eyes the figure, remarking that its gear looks anything but ordinary. Facing the duo, the puppet master readies its sword, radiating a powerful purple aura. The monster unleashes a blue energy attack. Clark shouts for Luna to move, and she cries out in surprise. As they recover from the impact, Clark admits she was right. Clark's eyes gleam as he recognizes the sheer genius of the Hall family. He identifies the armored figure as a candidate for family head and the Empire's greatest swordsman. Revealing himself as the Golden Sword King, Phoenix Hall, the monster declares his intent to switch to a new body. This testing ground was created by the Hall family specifically to select a successor. It is a secret realm, magically fashioned by a mage over 300 years ago to hoard the Northern Empire's monsters and treasures. Even now, the corpses of those crushed by goblins still wander the land. It's revealed he hid in plain sight, a revered swordsman and mystic of the Empire who, despite his nobility, couldn't use magic. Rumors ridiculed him for it, but anyone who doubted his skill was quickly surprised. The golden armored monster then declares that those doubters simply no longer exist. Clark studies the threat, acknowledging the presence of the Hall family's Golden Sword King. Her face grim, Luna expresses shock that a level 3 monster could control a candidate from one of the Empire's 4 great families. Smiling slightly, Clark asks if it's really that strange. He figures the parasite used the children to weaken him, then infected him when it found an opening. A spider-shaped parasite is then revealed, clinging to the monster's neck. Nobles are human too, Clark argues, finally declaring it's time to send him to God. Hearing his words, Luna keeps her determined expression ready for battle. With a malicious laugh, The golden armored monster asks if they are afraid of him. It then commands them to bow before its presence. Clark watches the enemy's sword technique and warns Luna an attack is imminent. The monster executes a powerful sword art, cloaking itself in purple energy. Luna and Clark quickly dodge the strikes as the purple energy blasts the ground around them. Clark grips his blade, ready to counterattack. He executes the Baron sword technique, launching multiple blade illusions at the monster. The monster realizes the technique creates illusions to confuse the enemy. It understands the boy's technique hides the real attack within the illusions. The monster mocks the technique, calling it pathetic as it shatters the illusions. Turning, the monster declares that such a technique won't work on him. The golden armored monster then prays for divine protection. Luna advances, executing her pure white blade sword technique. The monster easily dodges Luna's attack, mocking her slowness. The enemy lands a blow on Luna, making her stagger and cry out in pain. Clark then attacks the monster with a burst of blue energy. Clark's gaze remains serious and piercing as he wields his sword. He continues the assault with his blade, cloaked in a bluish aura. Clark lands a precise blow, forcing the monster back. In a flash, the armored monster defends against Clark's attack with its own sword. The monster is surprised by the boy's reaction speed, even against a robust body, while Clark watches with a confident smile. The monster launches another attack from above, calling Clark an arrogant insect. Clark smiles, his expression confident and provocative. Clark leaps and executes the Mesu sword technique, creating multiple illusions as the monster reacts with curiosity. Attacking, the monster mocks the boy, saying he never learns. The Golden Sword King reacts in surprise, noticing something unusual. Surprised, the monster asks if the liquid that hit it is alcohol. Then the monster is engulfed by a direct hit from a fiery explosion. As the burning monster questions if this is even a sword technique anymore, Clark asks what he's talking about. He explains that his technique uses both deception and reality to damage the enemy, concluding that using a sword didn't actually matter. The flaming monster reveals its decaying body won't last much longer. Suddenly, the monster reacts in confusion, not understanding what's happening. Clark's face shows pure determination. He thinks back to a resistance camp from his past life. Clark asks a man if this is his secret weapon. The man explains. They put flintstones in alcohol. He says they ignite with just a small impact, especially when crushed and mixed with strong liquor. To demonstrate, the man sparks an intense flame in his hand. He laments that many died underestimating the dosage. They worked in desperation, hoping the nobles would reward them. But the nobles abandoned them the moment the demons showed up. Still, he guarantees it will work, even against tough demons. He declares he'll show them a miner's pride. Clark asks the artifact's name, gripping the flasks tight. With a furious shout, Clark throws them, naming the technique Divine Punishment! A powerful fire explosion erupts, engulfing the area in intense flames. The flaming monster recoils, wondering what kind of power hit it. Luna charges the monster, declaring they aren't just bugs. Clark explains that the puppet insect mother stays in the nest to protect her young. He tells Luna he'll create a distraction while she uses the flask to wipe them out. Amidst the fire, the monster roars at the humans, while Clark congratulates Luna. Burned enemy remains scatter across the ground. Angry, Luna declares they must defeat it to protect God's power and the dignity of divine messengers. The monster, still ablaze, stomps the ground and curses them both. Clark detects mana and wonders what it means. Then, the monster forcefully grips its golden sword. The monster rises with power, declaring it will burn them to ashes and collect the scraps. Luna gasps, asking if it's magic. Clark realizes it's the golden sword. The monster roars, enveloped in flames and energy. A massive fire explosion erupts from the monster, spreading outwards. The furious monster tells them to prepare themselves. The monster mocks their naivety as Clark attacks with his sword. Clark feels a strange mana and winces in pain, realizing something is off. It's revealed the monster has low mana, beginner magic, but Sword King level swordsmanship. Surprised it's only beginner magic, Clark shouts to Luna to end it quickly. Luna charges with her blue energy, attacking with her sword. The impact launches her upwards amidst floating debris. Luna is surprised watching the monster emanate purple energy. Suddenly, several armored monsters emerge from the ground, wrapped in purple energy and fire. As the creatures rise from the flames, a voice asks if they've forgotten something. The armored monster gives an evil grin, asking if they thought they'd already won. Shocked, Luna asks if the monsters split up. Clark is surprised. He's never seen a technique like this. Facing the surrounding horde, Clark yells for Luna to be careful. The monster mocks Clark's concern, asking if now is the time to worry about others. Facing the threat, Clark counterattacks with his sword, using a technique to condense ice into any shape. On impact, The golden-armored monster is completely encased in condensed ice. Clark stands firm amidst the surrounding blue ice shards. He reacts with surprise and determination as flames crackle in the background. Even after the attacks, the golden-armored monster declares that the Golden Sword King is immortal. The monster raises its golden sword, shouting a challenge. Roaring, the monster attacks, engulfed in powerful fire spreading all around it. The pair moves quickly, dodging the monster's furious assault. Clark catches Luna, who is visibly exhausted and panting after the dodge. Watching the enemy, Clark wonders how regenerating its body and armor and even splitting apart could possibly be considered beginner-level magic. He wonders what is truly going on with this enemy. Meanwhile, Luna lets out a pained sound and coughs up blood. Clark helps her sit up and asks if she's all right. She nods yes. Luna apologizes for not being able to do more in the fight. Clark comforts her, admitting it was his fault for thinking divine punishment would be enough to end the monster. He tells Luna to rest while he deals with the creature himself. Luna, even wounded, tries to protest, insisting she'll come too. Surprised, both look up as they hear a strange sound coming from high atop the wall. Clark's expression turns to alert as he realizes the new threat. Floating in the air and surrounded by flames, the monster asks Clark if he really thought he could stop him. Ignoring the threat, the monster laughs, calling them fools for thinking they could stop him. With a firm gaze, Clark retorts that the enemy is just a persistent parasite. He keeps his expression sharp while processing the situation. The monster asks if they brought the larvae back this time, just as a horde of creatures with greenish eyes approaches. The King of the Golden Sword wields his blade again, promising that this time he will guarantee Clark's death. The monster attacks again, ordering them out of his sight along with their disgusting puppets, sending the boy and girl falling from a great height. As he falls, Clark condenses powerful blue energy in his hands. He attacks the monster with his condensed ice technique, surrounding it with ice crystals. Using its flaming sword, the monster breaks free from the ice, shattering the surrounding crystals. Amidst the steam generated by the fight, the boy realizes the enemy is using the smoke to hide his movements. Clark tells Luna to go on ahead, but she stays behind him. With a groan of discomfort, the girl grabs him from behind, visibly struggling. Concerned by her reaction, Clark questions her. Eyes full of tears, Luna apologizes, revealing she can't move anymore. Clark reveals that the monster is controlling the death puppet worms, as small parasitic spiders appear on the enemy's hand. The monster, still ablaze, warns that Clark's heroism only prolongs their suffering. Shouting a command, the monster orders the two to bow before him as Clark and Luna are thrown backward. Clark spits blood, reacting in pain from the impact. Facing the injured Clark, the monster proclaims the battle is already his. Luna watches Clark on the ground as a feeling of despair washes over her. Clark, his face bruised, reflects that this is the exact same expression the monster's original body wore. The monster laughs wickedly as intense purple energy bursts from its chest and spider webs emerge all around. Surrounded by spider webs and purple energy, the monster declares it will devour them. Amidst the webs, the monster yells that he will break every piece of those bindings, while Clark remains trapped. Clark hangs upside down, wrapped in webs, as the enemy's purple blade draws closer. The monster flashes an evil smile, promising to devour Clark along with his blood. Suddenly, a female creature with horns and wings emerges from the armor, exclaiming that she finally broke free from that rotten shell. The young man looks at spheres of blue energy, reflecting on how long it's been since the selection began. He worries aloud if Colin is safe. The other person replies they can't be sure. The barrier blocks their view deeper into the maze. Holding a flask, the girl assures him that Colin can handle the enemies inside without any trouble. Hearing this, the young man murmurs thoughtfully about there being no trouble. He hopes that's true, but his tone is uncertain. Meanwhile, a stranger groans, sounding uncomfortable. A female creature emerges from spiderwebs and purple energy, telling Clark he should feel honored. Then, the creature lets out a terrifying scream, revealing red eyes and sharp fangs. It screams at Clark, declaring he will become its flesh and blood. It adds that he will help bring prosperity to its kingdom, but Clark just makes a small sound of contempt. Though trapped in the webs, Clark warns the creature that while he doesn't want to ruin its moment, its clan, he cries out in pain as he gets hit by greenish energy. Luna attacks the creature with her sword as Clark finishes his sentence. Its clan ends right here, today. Struck and surprised, the creature demands to know why, asking why Luna isn't under its control. Luna, hair covering her face, apologizes and reveals she was just pretending earlier. She explains it was all a plan to lure the creature out of the Golden Sword King's body. The creature reacts in shock as the girl charges forward, wielding dual swords with her sword art technique. Luna unleashes 100 slashing sword strikes, hitting the enemy relentlessly. Meanwhile, the young man forces himself free, breaking out of the creature's bonds. Facing the onslaught, the creature regrets being tricked again as the young man attacks from above. Visibly furious, the monster calls them both cowards. Even with the young man holding it down, the creature still claims to be immortal. Dagger in hand, Clark tells the enemy to stop pretending it's immortal. He continues, calling the creature a fake piece of trash that needs to face reality. Then Clark attacks, declaring that it's nothing but a parasite. The creature emits strange groans as greenish liquid oozes from its wounds. With the main creature dead, the other moving corpses let out a wailing sound. Soon, all the corpses disintegrate in a burst of green energy. Meanwhile, Luna stands with her eyes closed, covered in the greenish liquid. She expresses her disgust at the sticky substance on her body. Covered in greenish slime, Luna continues to show her disgust for the sticky substance. Clark looks at his blade, coated in the green liquid, and makes a disgusted sound. With a teasing smile, Luna asks Clark if the liquid wasn't actually quite useful, while he stammers a reply. Not really caring, Luna suggests they move on, but he asks where they are going. As they run, Clark explains they are heading to the back of the building. Luna asks if they've reached a dead end, but he reveals there's a secret room here. Clark reflects that after defeating the puppet insect mother, the parasite inside him disappeared too. Luna asks why they are going even deeper. Clark replies that they are there to pass the selection test. Luna reacts with a surprised sound at his words. Facing the glowing opening, Luna wonders if the ring is inside. Clark explains the place holds an important key, then corrects himself with a more precise description. Luna reacts with surprise at his revelation. Entering a new room, Luna is shocked to see it filled with gold and treasure. Her eyes shining with surprise, Luna exclaims that it's a treasure trove. Clark explains that the testing ground might be where the next Hall family heir is chosen, but it's also where the family hides countless secrets and a treasure. Clark remembers that in his past life, he only found that place by pure luck, yet he was nearly dead, and he still failed the test. Examining the parchment, the young man wonders if it's a map of the dusk-deep forest. He continues to observe the strange markings on the map. The young man keeps his gaze focused as he analyzes the map. Clark expresses surprise at the enormous mana and the strange voice. He asserts that there was definitely some kind of secret in the dusk-deep forest. With a determined look, the young man declares he needs to pass the test to investigate. Clark reacts with surprise at seeing a simple cloth pouch amidst the enormous amount of gold coins. The young man wonders why there's an old cloth pouch in a place like that. Then, bluish energy bursts from his arm in the shape of a magic circle. The young man is shocked to see the item's description. It reveals it to be a magic tool capable of storing any object, like a pocket dimension. Clark reflects on the object, thinking about the infinite bag that can store any item. With a slight smile, the young man realizes the object's implication. With that, Luna shouts the young man's name, getting his attention. The girl screams in frustration that there was no ring anywhere. Clark then asks if she had finished searching the whole room. Clark then asks her who said the ring was there. The girl responds in surprise that he had spoken about a key. With a smile, the young man asks her to gather some pretty gems, the kind that shine even in the dark, assuring her she would understand why in a second. Luna then reacts with surprise, questioning the request for gems. With the gems in hand, the girl reflects on whether this would be the key to passing the test. Noticing her silence, Clark asks if something was wrong, but Luna quickly replies that it was nothing. Soon, the girl asks what their plan was for moving forward. The young man replies that they are going to find the ring, but Luna questions if he knew where it was. With a smile, Clark replies that this wasn't a club, while the girl watches him in surprise, holding the gems. However, he completes his thought, saying he knew someone who probably knew where the ring was. Luna watches him while the young man explains that the person was a professional at this. Soon, a powerful impact of blue energy strikes a tree, shattering its wood. Clark then charges forward, wielding his sword and generating several bluish illusions of himself. With a weary look, the young man laments that that also wasn't the correct item. Clark then reflects that, no matter how hard he thought, he still couldn't recreate the golden sword. Clark then reflects that Phoenix was a heretic noble who, without talent for magic, had walked the path of the sword. He thinks that there were similar spells in the magic tome. With that, the young man reflects that they were all high magic, and that common soldiers shouldn't be able to use them. Clark notes that his sword energy clone might look similar, but its performance didn't come close to Phoenix's afterimage. The young man wonders what kind of trick the enemy had used to achieve that. Next, he turns his attention to another item he found. It is revealed that that object was an infinite sock that could store anything, like a pocket dimension. He mutters about the blood mark, thinking about the item's effect. Clark then wonders if the item didn't want him to feed it with his own blood. With that, the image of the golden sword appears in his mind, while a voice whispers for him to feed it with blood. Soon, Clark wields his sword, while a purplish-blue energy envelops his blade. His blade shines intensely with the mystical energy. With this, the young man reacts with surprise to something. Clark remains standing in the middle of the forest, while a huge boot approaches his direction. Luna then appears, greeting Clark with a smile as she calls his name. Luna shouts happily that she had placed all the gems exactly where the young man had instructed. While Luna asks what he was doing, the young man replies that he was training with the sword. Soon the two remain standing in the middle of the forest, surrounded by the tree stumps Clark used to train. Luna then questions if that professional he spoke of would really be around here, as the location didn't seem like an inhabited place. Facing something unexpected, the girl screams in fright while backing away. Clark then makes a sound of surprise while the girl asks him what had happened. The young man then comments that, speak of the devil, their guest had arrived, all while holding the torch. With that, the mysterious monster attacks with a huge hammer that shines intensely, and the two quickly dodge the blow. The massive hammer slams into the ground with explosive impact, creating giant ice crystals. But the pair manages to dodge just in time. Right after, they spot a small pig with glowing red eyes and blue crystals embedded in its hooves, trying to make a sound. Luna asks if this little guy is really the ring-finding expert, and the young man confirms it. It's revealed to be a gem pig, a monster with a habit of sniffing out and collecting treasures, gold, and gems. Upon hearing this, the girl murmurs the creature's name, her eyes still fixed on the animal. Luna then recalls that the creature has an incredible nose for buried treasure, but it is also very shy and cautious. As a shy and cautious legendary monster, finding one is incredibly rare, and the pig reacts with irritation. Clark sarcastically remarks that it was terrifying, while the little creature glares at him angrily. Luna comments on their luck in finding such a rare monster, even if gathering the gems hadn't exactly been easy. Clark reflects that this situation is, without a doubt, way better than his previous life. The girl asks if he really intends to use that little creature to find the ring. Clark kneels beside the pig and confirms while the girl watches him. Smiling, the young man tells the pig he isn't an enemy, he just wants to make a deal. He then promises to set it free immediately if it helps him. With that, he grabs the bag of gems and tells the creature he isn't asking for its help for free. Clark then offers the gems to the gem pig, which eyes them curiously. The young man praises the creature's keen sense of smell, explaining they snagged that treasure from the puppet insect queen's nest. The pig listens to Clark's proposal, 10% of the gems if it does the job, as he asks if that isn't a good deal. Facing the proposal, the gem pig and its companion watch cautiously, as if undecided. Soon the little creature starts nibbling on the gems the young man is offering. He watches the creature as the gems slip from its paw. Clark crouches beside the creature, while Luna reacts with surprise, asking if he would give half the treasure to the pig after their hard work. The young man reacts irritably, saying he wouldn't give more than that. At this, the gem pig shows a satisfied expression. The little creature lies down at the young man's feet, surrounded by the gems, indicating its acceptance of the deal. Clark then questions if that meant a yes from the creature. Smiling, the young man declares the deal accepted, and the creature seems ready to start its work, breaking the crystals off its hooves. Then, the gem pig pokes the young man's leg, as if beckoning him to follow. Clark then calls Luna, asking the girl if she remembered the appearance of the ring. Luna answers that yes, she remembered, but leaves the sentence hanging. Clark reveals that the creature could even smell memories, and asks her to show her head, catching Luna by surprise. The young man smiles, admitting he had forgotten the fact that the creature could sense memories from his past life. Facing the situation, Luna murmurs resignedly that it couldn't be avoided. The little creature reacts with anger upon realizing their intention. With that, the gem pig runs quickly across the ground, making the boy and girl watch it. Next, the little creature advances through the grass, following a scent trail. Soon, the animal climbs a tree while the young man tracks its movement with his eyes. The gem pig jumps from branch to branch, with Clark and Luna following from high in the trees. With a penetrating and serious gaze, the young man demonstrates that he understood the situation. Facing a scene of erupting volcanoes, a voice thinks about the adversary's next move. Then, the little creature observes the surroundings intently, stopped on a tree branch. Wide-eyed with amazement, Luna watches erupting volcanoes as the gem pig carries them through the air. Clark explains that gem pigs can change size and even fly. Impatient, Luna asks the gem pig how much longer it will take. The young man keeps a serious, piercing gaze, showing he is focused. Then he spits blood, visibly injured. Injured, the young man asks if she planned to kill him. With a slight smile, the girl answers yes. She confesses she's met many strong people, but he is her favorite. She tells him he really is her favorite. She laments that she really wanted to make him hers. She continues, expressing her frustration. With a twisted expression, she questions why this had to happen. She insists everything could have been different. She regrets that they could have been together forever, if only things were different. Then she declares, if she can't have him, he should just stay there with the rest of the corpses. She murmurs, as if suddenly remembering something important. The young man, his face injured and bleeding, keeps a serious, focused gaze. Mouth open, the girl begins to introduce herself. She tells him not to forget, even in death, calling him her beloved Colin. Clark snaps back with a burst of energy, hearing an alarmed voice calling for his attention. Luna points ahead, announcing they are almost there. Clark wonders why he was suddenly thinking of his past life, while Luna watches him with a smile. Yet Luna remains silent, as if she has more to say. The gem pig flies past a statue, as Clark thinks he can finally repay the debt from that day. The impatient gem pig keeps moving. Clark pets the little creature's head. Clark and Luna leap down, landing next to the gem pig. An imposing statue of a Rocky man stands in the center of the area. Facing the statue, Luna comments on how strange it is. With serious expressions, they both carefully observe what lies ahead. The gem pig moves toward a stone structure near the statue as they watch. The little creature sniffs the air using its keen sense of smell. Looking annoyed, the gem pig reacts to the situation. Looking at the structure, Luna asks if the ring is really there since it looks empty. Clark fulfills his promise, handing the gems to the gem pig, whose eyes sparkle while watching them. Satisfied, the little creature begins savoring the gems. Ignoring them, the gem pig runs off with the bag of gems, making Luna ask where Clark is going. Clark claims the gem pig's nose is reliable, but there must be a trick to finding the ring. Clark exclaims that he knows what to do, taking the girl's hand. Luna suggests that if they pray to God, he might lend them his power. She prays fervently, asking God to answer his devotees, then questions if it's working. A golden magic circle begins to form over the stone structure, reacting to her prayer. Luna excitedly exclaims that the structure is reacting as the magic circle completes. The ring shines brightly as it emerges from the structure, and a voice instructs Clark to take it. Clark reaches for the ring, realizing this is what he worked so hard for. Luna points out that with this, he'll be free from the Williams family's control. Smiling, she says that as thanks for deceiving him, she'll let him keep the ring just this once. Clark thinks that by taking the ring, the selection test will finally be over. Clark believed he was just one step away from becoming a successor candidate, but before he could finish that thought, the young man drew his sword. With a powerful strike, Clark launched his sword, unleashing a burst of energy and sending flying rings toward the enemy. As the sword flew through the air and Clark readied himself for combat, Luna watched silently. Clark complimented the girl on her performance, but she just floated there, surprised to see his sword stuck in the ground. With a confident smile, Clark murmured that the old man would have been completely fooled by that show. An aura erupted around her as Luna declared it was time to end this charade, introducing herself as Annie. Clark corrected her, suggesting he should perhaps call her the ninth blade of the Empire instead. Luna let out a malicious laugh, touching her face with the ring on her finger. Her expression twisted as she muttered that she thought she'd hidden her true identity better. Luna adopted an honest demeanor, while Clark watched her, sword in hand, a small furry object lying on the ground nearby. Then, with a look of astonishment, the girl questioned where she had gone wrong. A young man reacted in surprise upon hearing the name, the ninth blade of the Empire, coming from a magic portal. A woman screamed that it was a lie, while a young man asked another woman named Erica what was wrong with her. The woman expressed sheer shock, unable to believe that Eve, the head maid, could be an assassin. Luna maintained her evil expression, wearing a sarcastic smile. Suddenly, she attacked with her sword, spinning through the strikes. As Luna watched him, Clark prepared for a counterattack, energy radiating from his body. Luna moved through the air as the young man charged forward with his blade in a powerful attack. Faced with the situation, Luna smiled and noted that they were meeting again. Just as Luna attacked with a burst of energy, Clark moved to retaliate with his sword. Luna then remarked that what he said earlier wasn't exactly a great pickup line. With a provocative smile, the girl remained cloaked in energy. Then, Luna attacked Clark with multiple chains of energy raining down from above. She declared she wouldn't allow a fallen noble, a divine messenger who blasphemed against God, to use magic. Facing the attack, Clark found himself trapped in the energy chains as the ground shattered around him. Even trapped, the young man held his stance firmly, wielding his sword. As Clark broke free from the attacks, Luna offered a smiling compliment. With a shout of satisfaction, the girl rose into the air. Luna hovered high above, her gaze determined, ready for the next move. Keeping her expression twisted, Luna commented on the sensation of being on the verge of death. Clark attacked with his fist, causing the ground around them to shatter. As the boy leapt up with his sword, the girl fell back, pieces of the ground scattering everywhere. Luna approached, smiling wickedly as she gripped her blade. The girl let out a surprised sound, keeping a wide smile plastered on her face even as her knife was covered in blood. With a sinister smile, she declared that this was the feeling of being on the verge of death. The young man quickly advanced, preparing for the attack. Luna then unleashed a kick at the boy, but he dodged the blow. The girl maintained an eccentric smile, sticking her tongue out with a satisfied expression. Both the boy and the girl were forcefully thrown back as chunks of the ground flew around them. Clark maintained a serious, alert gaze focused on the situation. With a wicked smile, Luna wiped the blood dripping from her mouth with her hand. The girl laughed maniacally, declaring that this was the best part of it all. Surrounded by electrifying energy, she thanked God for bringing her back from the Reaper's scythe. Keeping a determined gaze, the girl promised to follow his orders and complete her mission as she prepared to use the disconcerting rock sword technique. Clark was hit by a powerful wave of energy, hurling him backward forcefully. The young man spun amidst the whirlwind of energy, trying to regain his balance on the ground. With a doubtful expression, Clark questioned if this was some kind of guidance. Clark wondered if the statue had influenced her thinking. As a mysterious voice resounded, the boy wondered if this was also guidance, just as a strange sound revealed he was hungry. Luna yelled at the boy not to look away as she charged with her blade. With agility, Luna attacked with her sword as Clark counterattacked with his own, generating a clash of energies. As Luna let out a laugh, Clark watched her closely amidst the chaotic movement. Luna then mocked the boy, asking where all his sharp intuition had gone. Clark realized it was nothing more than an illusion. With a doubtful expression, the boy murmured a sound of surprise. Clark then began to say that it was something else entirely. With a final blow, Luna said her farewells, declaring that this was the end for Colin. Luna bids Colin farewell, retorting that he couldn't defeat her without magic. Meanwhile, Luna moves swiftly through the combat. Clark wields his blade, glowing with blue energy. The young man advances with determination, launching ice crystals that scatter through the air. Clark smiles as he unleashes a powerful blue energy attack shaped like shards. Luna reacts with surprise and pain, struck in the chest by the blue energy shards. With his blade against her chest, Clark explains that he knows someone who enjoys risking their life in dangerous battles. Bleeding and wearing a twisted smile, Luna asks if they've met before, implying a battle she failed to finish. Clark replies that she wasn't entirely wrong. He adds that he knew a great deal about her way of the sword, and her presence. Clark reveals that she possesses a special constitution, making her immune to poisons. Luna questions if he means her physical constitution. Then Clark asks if she remembers the herbal soup he made her drink to delay transforming into a corpse. Clark then reveals he had actually spiked the soup with a paralyzing poison, yet she remained perfectly fine. With a sinister smile, Luna comments that he was a bit careless in the end, but his acting skills were impressive. Luna bursts into maniacal laughter, the wound still open on her chest. She places a hand over the bleeding wound on her chest, expressing that he was... Smiling, Luna finishes her thought. He was truly incredible. She grabs his hand. Meanwhile, the girl reflects on her childhood and how she hated fairy tales. To her, those stories were full of unfamiliar things, like family, happiness, and love, so she avoided them. In her youth, she already had no parents. All that accompanied her was darkness and loneliness. With a distant look, Luna recalls the past. She remembers the countless deaths she witnessed and those she caused with her blade. Even without fully understanding, Luna makes a sound of discomfort at the memories. Amidst the grim setting, Luna wonders what love actually was. Standing before a cornered man, Luna asks if he could tell her what love is. With a terrified face, the man screams. The image of fairy tales appears again, now bloodied. Luna tells the man that no one she asked had ever answered her question. They only gushed sweet blood. Even amidst all the suffering, Luna realizes that God had kept her alive. She kneels to pray to a merciful God, begging him to hear her voice. Eyes closed, Luna wonders when she would finally obtain love. Suddenly, her eye glows brightly, as if her prayer had been heard. With her eye glowing intensely, Luna murmurs that it is wonderful. Soon, an unknown woman flanked by two men murmurs about the screams and laments of someone's soul. A mysterious man shrouded in light begins to speak of that answer. He would teach it to whoever was listening. Then, a mysterious eye questions if that is God. Luna thanks God for freeing her from the dark prison. She remarks that as a maid of the Williams family, she became a member of the Empire's Blade. Even in daily life where death was constant, she continued continues her merciless attacks. Luna explains that no matter how dangerous the situation, she always survived. She claims it was all thanks to God, and that without realizing it, she began to appreciate death. She holds up a small vial containing liquid, labeled with a skull. With a sinister smile, she reveals this was the only way to get closer to God. Luna continues, explaining that every time she was saved from the Reaper's scythe, she could feel God's presence. Then Luna coughs, spitting up a considerable amount of blood. Even in that moment, she claims God smiled upon her. With a malignant smile, Luna declares that although the poison was given to everyone, only she survived through God's power. She asks him to give her the answer someday. In response, a mysterious eye with red veins instructs Luna. If she follows its guidance, the answer will one day be hers. Following the guidance, she reveals she inflicted pain and despair upon those fools, making them pay the price for their disrespect. Then, the mysterious eye encourages her to continue, stating she would soon have her answer. Luna then recalls that God always transmitted his words to her through Lady Katrina's ring. He promised that if she did everything in her power to help, one day he would reveal himself through the object. Thus, she reveals she was the only one who could hear God's words, and that she had been chosen by him. Suddenly she makes a sound of discomfort, her eyes wide. Wincing in pain, Luna murmurs about the poison right then. Soon, two maids run over in alarm, shouting that Evelyn or Annie has fainted again. While the maids watch her worriedly, Luna thinks that soon she will discover the answer. Amidst the grim landscape, Clark and Luna sit together, observing a large stone structure. Wounded and bleeding, Luna comments that Clark isn't just strong, he understands her like no one else. She muses that this pain and emotion must be love, referring to herself as Evelyn. Smiling maliciously with her tongue stuck out, Luna whined that she really wanted to make him her puppet and gain his love. Despite her bleeding wound, Luna asked God if this was the final trial. Clark glared seriously, ordering the girl to give up. That dream wasn't happening this time. He remarked what a pity it was, his hand tightening around his sword hilt. Luna lunged with her blade, declaring he was still very much alive. Clark then explained why the poison didn't work on him. Luna finished his sentence. It was because she already carried poison in her own body. Clark looked surprised, not understanding her revelation. Suddenly, a figure was hurled backward in an energy explosion that shattered the ground. The figure was swallowed by smoke, groaning in discomfort. Wounded and bleeding on the ground, Luna laughed maniacally. Lying on the ground, the boy wondered if it had been crushed to pieces. Luna reacted with shocked surprise, admitting she hadn't expected that. Clark revealed he had studied beforehand to prepare for just such an event. He went on to explain that the infinite bag could also store living things. Clark added that the only problem was it was also quite hard to get out of. Amidst the pain and blood, Luna let out a maniacal laugh. Looking at the scene, Clark declared it was over, while the wounded girl whined on the ground. With the blade still in her body, she murmured that she liked him even more now. She demanded one last thing. Why hadn't he killed her earlier instead of bringing her to the ring? Clark began to say that if she was lying, with a quick movement, he drove the blade into her leg, making her groan in pain. He continued to twist the blade, intensifying the pain and bleeding. Luna screamed in pain, her body writhing. Amidst the suffering, the girl cried out to the deity for forgiveness for her foolishness. Grunting in discomfort, he felt the pain rising as blood splattered. Luna screamed again, overcome by excruciating pain. Clark maintained his serious, piercing gaze, despite his blood-stained face. The girl revealed she couldn't offer his blood as a sacrifice after all. She declared she would offer her own heart instead. He asked if she wanted his blood. Suddenly the ring glowed brightly. Luna held up her own heart as a magic circle and reddish aura appeared around her. Smiling macabrely, she revealed that his blood was needed to open the portal. He tried to kick her, but she countered with an even faster kick. She finished by saying his blood was no longer needed. Luna threw an object into the air, which glowed brightly amidst the spreading blood. Smiling sinisterly, she declared that God himself would punish him for his deeds. Clark watched the ring, confused about what was happening. The ring erupted with powerful reddish energy, splattering blood everywhere. A powerful beam of purple energy descended from above, striking the statue in front of them. The energy concentrated on the statue, illuminating it completely. Then, one of the statue's eyes glowed intensely with the purple energy. A voice warned that abnormal mana had been detected as Clark cautiously watched the energy beam. Clark prepared for combat, readying his sword and cloaking himself in a purple energy aura. Clark reacted with surprise, asking what that was. A mysterious voice warned that a demon was emerging, telling them to be careful. Upon hearing the warning, Clark muttered in surprise at the possibility of a demon appearing.